All right. Hey, good evening, guys. Listen, this is going to be a special response video strictly for Adam Eisenberg. Now, who's Adam Eisenberg? Adam Eisenberg just came out of the scene. He's rather new, and I found him by accident, actually. And he has a YouTube channel where he has one video. It's him talking about his experience at the Pentagon. Now, he doesn't believe a plane had hit the Pentagon. Okay, so I did a response video, but I was too obtuse, abusive a little bit. And you know what? Thinking about it, I wish I could have redone it. But I have a short fuse when it comes to people like this because we're coming on 21 years and we're talking about like no planes and stuff. So anyway, what makes him different is that he claims to have been a military, he's actually former US military who worked on the scene at the Pentagon. Now, I'd never heard of anybody who was at a scene on 9/11 making these fringe conspiracies. Now, what's not going to be done in his videos, I'm not questioning his background. I'm not questioning his membership with the US military. I'm not questioning whether he worked at the Pentagon or not. I don't know if he did. Now, he has certification that he worked at the Pentagon. I don't know if it's valid or not. I don't know if it's real or not. So because I can't prove or disprove it, I'm not going to entertain this because I only deal with facts. I don't like really to speculate on things because it could go either way. He may have been working at the Pentagon. He may be former US military while he's at the Pentagon. I'm only going to specifically critique his statements. Now, this was an interview done between Adam Eisenberg and Richard Gage. Yes, the same Richard Gage who was the former founder of Architects and Engineers. He has his own channel now, his own viral media. So Gage interviewed Adam Eisenberg. Now, Richard Gage himself doesn't believe a plane at the Pentagon. He has questions about it. So I'm not going to be talking about Gage either in this. I'm just strictly going to talk about the statements that Adam Eisenberg makes during the video. Now, the interview was taken on January 20th of 2022, and it basically was 2 hours long. So there was a beginning, like an introduction to Adam Eisenberg. Then there was this timeline, and then there was question and answers. Now, I've edited the video to only the timeline. So it's only 38 minutes long, and I'm going to stop at specific points of this video to critique the statements that he makes, right? So hopefully it won't be a very long video, but who knows? But I'm going to be using eyewitness testimony of the people who were there, the physical evidence that was there, and the victims of the plane crash itself. So the eyewitnesses to the plane crash that were outside the Pentagon, that were on the freeway, in the vicinity of the Pentagon, and of course, the victims, the burn victims of the jet fuel of the plane that he claims doesn't hit the Pentagon. So we'll start right from this point forward, which I found to be a good beginning to get into.
Just to kind of give you an example, I lean heavily on my experience, and so we all have seen the pictures. A lot of us at least have seen the major pictures that are up and on a lot of the websites, and we'll get to some of those shortly. But a lot of people just don't understand just how big these engines are. This is actually a Rolls-Royce RB211 engine that would be outfitted for a Boeing 757. Just to kind of give you guys an example of how big these things are. We've all, like I said, seen the pictures, and a lot of people say, well, that the hole, in that building, the Pentagon, that could logically explain a fuselage. But one of the things I've always been extremely interested in is, where is the proof of where these gigantic, very heavy, very large pieces of equipment, where did it?
Okay, I'm going to stop it right there, and we're going to talk about his point that he thinks that an engine of that size, go back to a picture, an engine of this size, this is a big engine, all right, Boeing 767-222 bus series engines are huge and massive, of course, because the plane is massive. Now he's expecting to see this piece of the plane to survive the impact. Now, look, this is something that I find to be quite troublesome regarding certain truthers, certain no-planers, is that they actually think that something this size is going to survive an intentional plane crash. Now, I'm not going to be harsh on him because I found this to be a very interesting anomaly regarding 9/11. Now, why don't we see large pieces of the plane at the Pentagon? Why don't we see a tail, the wing, the engine, right? How come we never saw this before with other plane crashes? I mean, in other plane crashes, we see large pieces of the plane. For example, Lockerbie, right? This is something that my good friend and excellent researcher, co-researcher, DJ Thermodetner, has done extensive background research, more than me, regarding Lockerbie. Now, that plane was actually flying over Ireland, I think, or Scotland. And basically, there was a bomb on board and it blew up in the air. And large pieces of the plane was scattered all throughout and it impacted homes and farms. But they saw, pieces of the fuselage, huge piece of the fuselage, huge pieces of the engine, huge pieces of the plane. I'm going to show you some pictures of, regular plane crashes, right? Regular plane crashes that we basically see when it happens, right? Even though these are rare, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share the screen and show you pictures of the plane crashes, which I Googled, right? Look at all these pictures. For example, look at all these pictures. Look at this huge piece of plane, right? Look at it. Plane crash. Look at it. It looks like it burned. Look at all the whole thing. What about here? Air India Express. Air India. Look. Huge. Right? Again. Right. So if you Google regular plane crash, you'll see large pieces of plane. Just large pieces that can be found anywhere near. Everything. All right. So why doesn't that make sense? I mean, why didn't we see this? Most plane crashes that we're used to seeing are plane crashes where the plane is actually trying to land, where the pilot is actually dumping the fuel. If there's a malfunction on the plane, he's actually dumping the fuel and trying to land on his belly at the slowest speeds possible, right? Following Adam Eisenberg? That wasn't the case with 9/11. Now, what happened on 9/11 is an extremely rare instance, right? Where you have a pilot who's actually trying to intentionally crash a plane. Now, that happened 4 times on 9/11. So it's really rare. Now, all these planes were selected by their durations. So all these planes were basically going from the East Coast to the West Coast. Why did they choose that? Now, they chose that because the plane will be fully loaded with kerosene. In other words, this plane is actually a bomb at this point. All right. So that alone should really tell you that where I'm going to go with this, because we are basically looking at the same thing 4 times. New York, Pentagon, Shanksville. All 4 of those planes were driven by pilots, right? I'm not talking about remote control technology, which could be a scenario, right? Without the pilot's knowledge. That could be a scenario. I don't know. I'm not a pilot or a mechanic for a pilot or work in the engineering department. I don't know anything. However, they're piloted by hijackers, and they all crashed intentionally into their targets at the highest speeds possible while fully loaded. Now, the explosion and the impact itself is not going to have any large remaining plane debris. Now, we've seen this before, especially with my, I did a short video to Jason Burmis. He's a co-producer of Loose Change, where he said, show me a plane crash that looked like Shanksville. And I did. So I'm going to share that screen with you and we're going to watch. Now, this is called Germanwings 9525. In 2015, this pilot actually flew deliberately into the side of the Andes Mountains. And I don't know how much fuel it was holding, but it wasn't as much as the fuel that was being held in New York, in Washington, D.C., and Pennsylvania, because they just took off and they crashed into their target soon after they took off. This plane was actually, I think, in mid-flight or near the end of the flight. I don't know how much fuel was there, but that wasn't the point. Point is, he was going at an extremely high rate of speed with low fuel, relatively decent fuel, and deliberately crashing. You tell me if you see a plane.
Even without the hope of survivors, this is an urgent task. Piecing together what happened here, it seems near impossible. And how to do it when there are so many pieces. And yet from such devastation, investigators have started to salvage the first hints of the flight's final moments, clues on which to build.
Does that look like a plane crashed anywhere when you look at this? Right?
And yet from such devastation.
Right here, this picture. Here's a piece of plane. Here's smoking debris. Look at this. Look at the debris. Small pieces of plane. This is the point that I'm trying to raise with you, and so is others, right? But you're not going to hear this because either you don't want to, I guess, change your perception of what happened at the Pentagon, or you are basically doing this on purpose. Now, I don't know if you're doing it on purpose. I'm just giving a scenario, right? I don't know if you're going to be honest or not. And particularly, I don't care if you're not, right? This is not an attack on you. This is an attack on your statements. I'm attacking your statements that you make. So what I'm showing here is easily proof that a deliberate plane crash leaves behind small pieces of the plane.
Investigators have started to salvage the first hints of the flight's final moments, clues on which to build. One piece in particular might...
And that black box actually looks better than the flight data recorder that they found at the Pentagon. And that's the flight data recorder right there.
Begin to present answers. One of the flight's two black boxes, damaged, but it turns out still very relevant.
Well, they found the cockpit doors. Look, see? Now look, these are small pieces of the plane. No large pieces. I don't see a tail. I don't see a wing. I don't see an engine, okay? And that was the point I was trying to make with Jason Burmis. He called me a troll because he doesn't want to change his worldview, right? So whether you do or not, Adam Eisenberg, it's up to you. But I'm just showing you evidence that a deliberate plane crash will leave behind small pieces of the plane. That's the reason why you don't see large engines at the Pentagon. They're not going to. And with that, right, I even put in like this news article where it says French police attempting to formally identify the 150 victims of Germanwings flight 9525, which crashed into the Alps. They have found between 400 and 600 remains at the site of the crash, but no intact bodies. Colonel Patrick Turin of the Gendarmerie Service told reporters gathered in the Alpine town of Sienne-les-Alpes, we haven't found a single body intact. Now, I noticed that you made the statement in the Gage interview. I think we're going to hint on that, but this would be my answer. Look, Germanwings 95, deliberate plane crash. They haven't found a single body. Why? You're not going to. The body is made out of 90% water, liquid, right? Now, on top of that, this plane had a half of fuel or low fuel. The Pentagon was filled with 38,000 pounds of fuel and it exploded. It was a massive explosion. On top of that, the plane was going 538 miles an hour. I don't know how fast this was going. But you can understand why you're not going to see whole bodies, why you're not going to see a tail, why you're not going to see a wing. And that's exactly the whole point of me showing you this video. And I could show you more. But do I have to? I mean, do you need more pushing? Maybe you do. I don't know. But, you know, let's see if we can,
Just to kind of,
you know, continue about your interview with Gage. So let's hold on. Let's go.
itself, because you know these things are very dense, and as you're going to see here pretty soon, you know, on the far right hand side, these things have a dry weight alone of 8,169 pounds. So to give you a little bit of perspective, you know, according to mechanicbase.com, the average car in and of itself, a small car, so a Nissan to a mid-sized car.
Right, but you know, all this is irrelevant now because you're just comparing weights, right? Who cares, right? I just showed you that planes can deliberately crash and then leave behind very small identical plane parts. You saw that with the one example I gave you. Now, there's another example. I mean, DJ Thermal Detonator uses another great example, probably even better. Flight 1771, PSA 1771. That plane actually broke the sound barrier where that plane went 700 miles an hour. And why I think that example is even better because, you know, I hear this all the time from people, oh, the planes went over their max speed, right? Well, yes, they can. It's dangerous, but they can, right? So when that plane crashed, PSA 1771, it crashed at over 700 miles an hour. And they didn't find whole bodies. There wasn't large plane debris, right? And, you know, just to show you pictures of that plane, you know, I'll, you know what, I'll even, let's go to the, I'll even show you better. I'll even show you better. Hold on. Let me share a screen and here. Debris field. Look at this. Where's the plane? Adam Eisenberg. Where's the plane? Look how small those pieces are. Look at this. Oh, and that is just unbelievable. That they even find that, you know, that much debris when the plane was crashing at 700 miles an hour. Look at this. Where you wouldn't even know. Let me pause it right there. You wouldn't even know if a plane had crashed. You wouldn't even know it. Guess what? Does that look like Shanksville to you? That's exactly what Pentagon would look like. There you go. And if you're not sold on that, I mean, you know, let's Google PSA 1771 plane. So, I mean, let me share the screen. Here was parts of the black box. I never saw a black box that destroyed. Wow, look at that. I don't even know if that's the cockpit or flight data recorder. Look at this. Look, I mean, look at this. Here. Wow. Just unbelievable. I mean, yeah, so that's my point, Mr. Eisenberg, is that I'm trying to show you that deliberate plane crashes leave behind very small pieces of the plane. End of story, right? So let's continue with the interview.
Car weighs anywhere from 2,600 to 3,500 pounds. You know, this engine dry weighs about 8,000.
By the way,
and so they're
add,
very big.
Adam, they didn't find engines at PSA 1771 or Germanwings 9525. But they found small pieces of the turbofan of the engine at the Pentagon, unbelievably. And we'll get to that in a minute because you do talk about, or it was in a picture.
Big, they're very large pieces of equipment. And so that's the one thing that I always kind of look for when I look at any Pentagon information. And that's a whole other topic of discussion in and of itself. This is actually a Pratt & Whitney engine in front of us. I believe this is the PW2000. But I just wanted to put some engine pictures on here just to highlight how big these are. You know, that handsome devil right there, I mean, he's probably around 6 foot tall, you know, so they're very large. And, you know, for all my fellow conspiracy theorists out there, I do have in my vault testimonies, evidence from fellow coworkers that will show that I did work at that facility. But I like to go back to this just to kind of show my personality. This is 2018 back in the facility. This is my Instagram account. You can see me looking like a jerk without a beard. UPS, we had to shave. That was kind of a management thing. You can see the Pratt & Whitney stuff here in the background, but this was right before I got my boss. We taped a bunch of ketchup packets to his desk. So that's what happens when he went out of town. But I say that jokingly. But anyways, back to the Pentagon. I like to talk about that experience because I do think it is essential and relevant. But
can you go back to that one picture?
Sure.
Where were you guys when you were outside the building here?
So when we were outside of the building, you guys can see these tents. We were typically in one of these tents. That changed.
Use your mouse, if you will.
So kind of in these tents right in here, that changed. You know, it just depended on wherever we were needed. A lot of times when we got there by platoon, we would kind of break off into different areas. We at first would stay in a holding area, and then we would come down on orders. Our higher ups would find out where we were needed the most, and then we would disperse.
So you basically came, you basically stood, according to you, 3 weeks at the Pentagon with the search and rescue. Now, at the Pentagon, there was over 1,300, I think, employees from the federal, state, and local level working in the search and rescue and the investigative operations. Now, there's a number of different agencies. This is the largest, and by the way, this was the largest federal, local, state response in Washington, D.C. history. It involved so many agencies and there was so many people involved that there were a number of commanders, but there is an ultimate on-scene site commander. His name was Arlington Fire Chief James Schwartz. Now, incidentally, I got in contact with him and it looks like I'm going to be interviewing him, whether next week or this weekend, maybe next weekend. But thanks to you, Adam Eisenberg, I wanted to interview him for many years because I think his testimony is invaluable. And he's the on-scene commander. And because of you, I pressed the issue in trying to locate him. I found him on LinkedIn. And I'm going to be talking with him for a little while. And he's got my number and email and stuff. And he agreed to an interview. He wants to know what we're going to talk about. I said, we're going to talk about your experience at the Pentagon, what you experienced, and the people that were involved in the search and rescue and their operations. So, I mean, there was a number of people working at the Pentagon. So you're just, if it's true that you're there, I'm going to take faith that you were there. I'm just going to say, because I can't disprove that you weren't there, and I can't prove that you were there, all right? You seem to have credentials that showed that you were there, right? But I don't know if those credentials are real. I have no way of knowing those connections are real. I'm just going by your words, basically, to say that you were there, because that's not the point here. The point is that I'm going to show contradictory evidence to your statements. And this is going to be worse for you because you claim to be there. Meanwhile, I'm going to report dozens of people that were there that contradict what you claim.
But when we were not in sight, we were typically out here in one of these tents.
Okay.
So let's see. So when we first went on,
and I hate to stop it. And what I'm going to do is, when I talked about different number of people that were there, that were in charge, let me just, give you a couple of other names. I just don't want to throw out one name. I want to throw out a number. So there's a guy, Captain Dan Fitch. He's the technical response, technical squad leader who is in charge of clearing the debris, the recovering of the remains, human remains, and he helped to stabilize the building. We talked about Jim Schwartz. There was another captain from the Arlington Fire Department named Mike Smith. He was in charge of Engine 108, and he actually led his crew on multiple sorties inside the Pentagon. Actually, one of the first people to arrive there after Schwartz was Derek Spector, who was an acting officer in charge of Truck 105, who led the first fire crew to enter the Pentagon. And then you had Fort Myer firemen that were at the heliport at the time of the impact. And we'll get to them in a minute. That's Mark Skipper, Alan Wallace, Dennis Young. Now, you had Sean Boger, who was actually acting as a controller at the Pelican helipad. And then you had Specialist Dakota Gallivan, member of the Army's Old Guard Regiment, who helped recover. It was helpful in the recovery of human remains and clearing the debris out of the Pentagon, and also labeling the human remains with these flags. I think they were using red flags, is it red or yellow flags to identify human remains. Tara Bloch, who was an FBI special agent out of Washington, D.C., she basically ran the Dover morgue that was in charge of collecting the human remains of the people in the Pentagon and the human remains, whatever left from the Pentagon, the passengers and crew at the Pentagon and the hijackers. And then you had a photographer who helped document the evidence of remains. She took her name is Jen Farmer. Jen Farmer actually went around the Pentagon, and most of the pictures that you see on Pentagon Damage regarding on Google, it's from Jen Farmer. Also Jen Hill. Jen Hill is also another photographer who helped document the evidence and the remains. And then you had special agent from Washington, D.C. field office of the FBI, Garrett McKenzie, who helped with photography, evidence collection, and he had coordination with the contractors. A number of different contractors were there. You had Montgomery Search and Rescue, Fairfax Search and Rescue, Fort Belvoir Fire Department, Fort Myer Fire Department, Ronald Reagan Air Force Fire Department, Ronald Reagan Airport Fire Department, Montgomery Search and Rescue. I mean, just a number of different agencies. I could just go on and on and on. Then you had Special Agent Tom O'Connor. He's one of the supervisors in charge of the evidence recovery. And Special Agent from the FBI Washington, D.C. field office, Mark Whitworth, who was a bomb expert who helped organize the search for the black boxes and other pieces of the plane. And I could give you a list of other people that were there who physically saw plane debris and human remains of passengers and crew that were identified and linked to American Airlines 77. I mean, I think I'll stop right there, but I could spend more time on it.
One of the things that I noticed was that there was tons of water, and I'm talking it was deep. So the firefighters had been spraying this down pretty considerably. I mean, I would go so far as to say, some of the places I was walking inside of the building had water that was at least covering my entire foot. There was a reason why we went in with biohazardous suits, with biohazardous masks on.
Yeah, and there's also, I don't know if he's aware of it, Adam, but when the plane impacted the Pentagon, it knocked out the fire sprinkler system in the building. Sounds familiar? That's exactly what happened at the World Trade Center.
And I'll also be the first person to say it. One of the first things I thought that, when I went on site was just kind of surprised at how little of damage was done. I don't think the pictures obviously ever do really any justice.
I can't, this is astonishing. The Pentagon West Wing was completely destroyed. The fire damage, which caused most of the damage, was extensive. It went down the entire first floor of the West Wing, the entire first floor. There was even fire damage to the second floor. Okay. Now, I noticed that you do talk about in this video, in this interview, that we should have seen fire damage on the outside of the windows of the second, third floor. And I'm going to show you why, that didn't happen. And it seems that you don't know much of the layout of the Pentagon. The Pentagon's run by floors. There's 5 floors of the Pentagon, 5 rings. And each floor is above each floor. So there's the roof line is not connected all the way around. Okay. They got to the fire, and what the firemen did was they broke holes on the top of the roof, and the fire didn't spread. But I'll talk about that in a minute, because you do talk about that. Now, according to Patrick Creed, who wrote the book Firefight, inside the Pentagon. And according to the after action report, the Arlington County after action report, the damage was enormous. And, basically what happened was that the damage was so extensive that they basically just bulldozed. In charge of by the way, the West Wing of the Pentagon was under a renovation. Now, the project was called the Pentagon Renovation Program, or PENREN short. And it started in 1996. Now, to talk about this, in extensive detail, was that they wanted, because there was threats to the Pentagon, and they even ran these operations like Moscow, Project Moscow, which was actually conducted in October of 2000, where the Pentagon office was basically the emergency management office was basically running drills about a plane crashing on top of the Pentagon on the rooftop and into the courtyard. And they were running operations. Who would be in charge of the operations? What about the continuity of government? So forth. Emergency operations, the state response, the local response, the federal response, all of this, right? It was talking about that. So they were practicing about this because the Pentagon itself was a target by fundamentalists for years, okay? On top of this, the Pentagon renovation program started way before that. And what they wanted to do was reinforce, because after the Oklahoma City bombing, what they wanted to do was reinforce the building to minimize the damage of a bomb inside the Pentagon. So what they did was they reinforced the walls. Now, in charge of this program was Lee Evey, right? Lee Evey was in charge of the Pentagon renovation program. And I think it ended in 2002. But when the Pentagon was attacked, basically what happened was that the West Wing of the Pentagon was nearing its completion, and the blast-resistant walls and the windows, which basically solidified the windows, and they worked because when the plane hit the Pentagon, you could see, like, on the second, third, and fourth floors of the fifth floor, you basically don't see the damage to the windows. They worked. In fact, the firemen inside the Pentagon, when they were doing search and rescue, were rescuing people who were suffering from smoke inhalation, right? And they were trying to bang out the windows with the fire axes, and they couldn't break through. So they're meant to survive nuclear blasts, not nuclear blasts, large scale bombings. And they worked, except on the first floor because the plane hit the first floor. So there's that. I just wanted to bring that up. So let's play.
But the actual damage itself was not that extensive. Some of the things that also stood out to me, a lot of people ask me about, what did I smell? Did I smell jet fuel? And the answer is no. There are three things that stood out more than anything.
Okay, now I want to talk about this big, right? Okay, so he didn't smell jet fuel. Now what I'm going to do is read to you eyewitness statements that I like using the John Judge and Penny Schoner list, which was conducted in 2002, which is a listing of all the people who basically testified to the fact, whether it's from in front of the media, whether it was in a documentary, whether it was in front of a film, or newspaper outlets that were interviewing them, whether they did it with the, I think it was called the September 11th Oral Histories Program, which is at the National Archives. I have all the videos for that, and I'm going to be uploading them to my playlist soon, actually, which now that we bring this up. So let's read some of the testimonies of these people who experienced jet fuel. Okay, jet fuel on outside walls and inside Pentagon. Eyewitness statements on jet fuel. Brian Birdwell. Now I mentioned this guy earlier, right? Lieutenant Colonel Brian Birdwell. He was heading back down the hall to his office when the building exploded in front of him, right? He was transferred to George Washington Hospital, where he was treated by the best cutting-edge burn doctor in the United States. The doctor told him that had he not gone to Georgetown first, he probably would not have survived because of the jet fuel in his lungs. He burned 60% over his body. He was coming out of a bathroom. He was in an office watching the day's events at the World Trade Center on a TV. Okay, Lieutenant Colonel Brian Burke. He went to the bathroom. As soon as he came out the bathroom, he was approximately like 60 feet away from the impact of the plane. So he was near the wings, and that's where the jet fuel is, right? So when the plane slammed into the first floor, the jet fuel doused the entire first floor of the West Wing, and he burned 60% over his body. Arthur Rosati, the muscle part of your brain takes over, and you just do what you've been trained to do, said Arthur Rosati, a member of the Pentagon Police and Union Shop Steward for the Fraternal Order of Police DC 1 Lodge. Rosati was in a meeting when the plane hit. I ran down the hallway, and there was smoke everywhere. You could smell the jet fuel. It was unbearable. I was overcome with smoke, but managed to get a lieutenant colonel out. I was back to the hallway. The smoke was so dense I couldn't stay. I was ordered out. And you could see the reference, Henderson Hall News, in which he did the interview. Rob Schickler, a Baylor University 2001 graduate and Arlington, Virginia resident, said, a plane flew over my house. It was loud, but not unusual because the Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport is by my house on the other side of the Pentagon. Occasionally planes that missed the landing fly over my house. The house shook, the windows were vibrating. There was a hole in the building and you could smell it in the air. It was a beautiful day, but you could smell the burning concrete and burning jet fuel. This guy is talking about from his house. He wasn't even in the Pentagon and he could smell jet fuel. Ron Turner, the Navy deputy's chief information officer, was standing solemnly at a funeral at Arlington National Cemetery. Another guy wasn't even at the Pentagon. There was a huge fireball followed by an unusual black cloud of a fuel burn. Turner, a helicopter pilot during the Vietnam War, said the explosion was just the same as explosions of jet fighters and helicopters during his tour of duty in 1971. It reminded me of being back in Vietnam. Matt Harr, Kurland's senior project manager at the Pentagon. The employee was thrown about 80 feet down the hall through the air. As he was traveling through the air, he says the ceiling was coming down from the concussion. He got thrown into a closet. The door slammed shut and the fireball went past him. Jet fuel was on him and it irritated his eyes, but he didn't get burned. Michael DePaula, project coordinator, Pentagon renovation team. He was at the Pentagon in the renovation project. He left the meeting in the Pentagon just minutes before the crash, looking for an electrician who didn't show. In a constructed trailer less than 75 feet away, suddenly an airplane roared into view, nearly shearing the roof of the trailer before slamming into the E-ring. It sounded like a missile, buried in debris and covered with airplane fuel. He was briefly listed by authorities as missing, but eventually crawled from the flaming debris and a shroud of black cloud smoke. Walker Lee Evie, program manager of the Pentagon Restoration Program. This is the guy I was talking about in charge of the program. Fires from the plane's 20,000 gallons of fuel melted windows into pools of liquid glass. Jerry Henson, inside his office, Henson freed his hands enough to move rubble off his shoulders. You could hear them lighting off. Now fires were burning closer as deposits of jet fuel ignited. You could hear them lighting off. They would go poof, kind of like when you light a furnace. You could hear those getting closer. Will Jarvis, from time spent on military aircraft as part of his job at the Pentagon, Will Jarvis knows what aviation fuel smells like. That smell was his only clue that a plane had crashed to the Pentagon, where he works as an operations research analyst for the Office of the Secretary of Defense. Mark Stephen Kirk, Representative Mark Stephen Kirk, a Naval Reserve Intelligence officer. The first thing you smell is the burning. And then you could smell the aviation fuel. And then you could smell the sickly, rotten meat smell. Dr. Thom Mayer had cleared his emergency room early Tuesday morning in expectation that Pentagon victims would be streaming into nearby Innovation Facts Hospital, where he heads to ER staff. By evening, he was out of the triage site at the Pentagon wearing one of his other hats as metal detector of the Fairfax County fire. He stayed there all night. There was jet fuel all over the place. It was very smoky. and it was difficult to breathe, even with a respirator. I saw horrifying things. It looked like the inner circle of Dante. Okay, the reason why I named a lot of these, I can name more. Look at all these others. Okay, Adam Eisenberg. Okay, so I'm not going to read anymore. I'm going to stop right there. And the reason why I named a lot of those people is because I'm showing you that your statement doesn't fit with the majority of people's statements and people who weren't even inside the Pentagon. They were outside and they smelled the jet fuel. Okay. Now that questions whether, who should I believe, them or you, right? That's a reasonable question, right? You can't blame me, right? You can't blame me for saying that. Now, if we were in a court of law and you basically went to a court of law and said, Your Honor, I was at the Pentagon. I could prove I was at the Pentagon and I didn't smell any jet fuel. I didn't see any evidence of jet fuel. And meanwhile, at the other end is a table of a slew of eyewitnesses. Not only were they inside the Pentagon, but they were outside the Pentagon. And they all testified, as you can see, to the fact that not only did they see jet fuel, they smelled it. And I think I read about 10 to your 1. You wouldn't do so well, sir. There's an overwhelming number of people who smell jet fuel. So that's all I wanted to say. Now, I'm not saying you're a liar. I'm not saying you're making this up or disingenuous. I'm challenging your statement with facts. So I'm going to do throughout this video. I'm going to do it through eyewitness testimony, physical eyewitness, physical debris, and technical data. Evidence, in other words, to contradict your statements made in this interview.
First and foremost, and the best way to describe it is electrical, like burning. Like if you're sitting in your house and all of a sudden you kind of get that smell that things are potentially burning, that it's an electrical source. It was very high in that.
It knocked out the entire electricity of the West Wing. Basically, there was also, you had a number of different generators inside the building, offices with electrical outlets, wires, and I mean, God, and especially the fire that was all throughout the first floor. Basically, the whole first floor was charred beyond belief.
Had a very standing water, kind of a nasty.
You ever smell burning wire? That's what he's explaining. You ever smell burning wire? It gives like a very distinct smell. Well, if you could smell that, you could smell jet fuel, right? Unless you came so way later, near the end of the search and rescue operations. But then that wouldn't fit with your timeline, would it?
Kind of.
So if we're going to go by your word that you were there, what is it, September 13th or whatever, what day you came, and you were there 3 weeks, I'm going to assume you were there almost right at the start of the search and rescue. How you didn't specifically smell jet fuel, maybe you were outside the building. But guess what? I just read you testimonies of people who smelled jet fuel outside the building. Now, your only defense is going to be this. 1, they're wrong. 2, they were coerced in saying that. 3, they're lying. These are your only 3 options. And if you're saying that they're misinformed, well, then how do you prove that, right? You have to go to that person, basically say, well, have a discussion about the smelling of jet fuel. 2, they're coerced. Good luck. How do you prove that? Are you going to say Dick Cheney, Don Rumsfeld, or the Illuminati somehow met these people? How do you know that? How could you go about proving that? You can't. 3, they were lying. Okay, good luck. Prove it. Prove that they were lying. Prove that, and I could have went on for 50 more names. How do you prove they're lying? Again, I'm not proving that you're lying. I'm only showing evidence that contradicts your statement.
Gross standing water kind of smell that was really kind of combined with that. And then last but not least, human remains leave a very distinct smell as well. And that was kind of combined in there with that as well. But we were wearing the protective masks But, even prior to us going inside of the building, you could smell those things very clearly.
Oh,
So kind of, the water was pretty significant. So they were really, trying to spray that down as much as they possibly could.
Yeah, all right. Now, let's talk about that for a minute. Why there's so much water. I mean, there was raging fires at the Pentagon, raging fires. So at this point, what happened was that the fire started on the first floor and then traveled to the roof because that the explosion, basically, you can see when you see the security camera video, right? You see the explosion and debris even traveling into the courtyard. Now there's evidence of testimonies saying that there was people that saw debris and burning debris on top of that in the courtyard of the Pentagon, right? The fires that were happening. Now, firefighters from Arlington, Fort Myer, Fort Belvoir, Ronald Reagan Airport, there was the damage on the first floor. Let's talk about the damage on the first floor real quick. Damage on the first floor happened at 10:10 a.m. The impact point, the damage, the first floor of the impact point collapsed, right? Now, the firefighters that were first there, Fort Myer and Arlington, they actually were inside the building. They heard the building increasing. Now, when I interviewed James Schwartz, he's basically going to repeat this, okay? Because it's in the book, Firefight, written by Patrick Creed, where he testified. The book is basically about testimonies of all the firefighters, first responders, EMS, FBI, FEMA, local and state investigators from all the agencies I involved earlier. And it's all, the book is based on all their testimonies, not from the author's point of view. Okay. It's the best book on Pentagon in the world. It's the best book. I'm going to link it at the bottom of the description, the Amazon book. Now, in that book, there's a number of different people who testify that, they were basically in danger of the building collapsing, the fires that raged for a week. And the collapse area was about 95 feet, and the widest point was 50 at its deepest, the deepest part of the damage. Now, when that collapsed, the fires intensified. That's the reason why I had to mention the collapse, because all the oxygen came in at that point when that collapsed and spread throughout. Now, the rooftop of the Pentagon is made out of horsehair. Okay, that's what they made out of the roof hair on top of the Pentagon. During the renovation project, they were going to replace it, but they didn't get to it in time. So that fire spread quickly on the first floor of the roof line. Okay, the fire spread through all 5 floors at certain points of the 5 floors. Didn't go out through the whole 5 floors, but first floor was completely under fire of the West Wing. Certain points of the second, third, and less on the fourth. At 11 a.m., firefighters from Fort Myer, Arlington, and I think Ronald Reagan, that came out. Yeah, Ronald Reagan, mounted almost like a 2-pronged attack to attack the fire. So what they basically did, because you brought this up in the interview, why didn't we see fire burns all throughout the rooftop? Well, they're not connected, the whole rooftops. Like I said before, there's 5 rooms. Not only that, when they got to the roof line, they were ordered to do the shear holes. And what they did was to let the fire stop from spreading, they would make holes on top of the roof with their axes. And also later, they brought in like these heavy duty Bosch drills that they hold drills and whatnot. So the fire could escape out these holes, shear holes, they're called. Okay, so they basically stopped the spread by doing this. But the fire was so intense because of the jet fuel and because of the office furnishings, the temperatures were so hot that they didn't want to stay on the rooftop for long because they dehydrated the firemen. Okay. By late afternoon, there was some progress made, but they realized that the flammable layer of wood underneath the Pentagon slate roof had caught fire, and that begun to spread. So your typical firefighting tactics were like useless at this point by the reinforced structure. As firefighters were able to reach the fire, they were unable to extinguish it that day. So what the firemen did was they made fire breaks in the roof of the Pentagon. Now, like I said before, those are the shears that they made, the holes. But they now had Bosch drills and drills, not the axes. So they really made big holes on top of the roof lines. And that was to prevent the further spread. And about 2 p.m. on the next day, the Arlington County issued that the fire was under control, but it was not fully extinguished. But they continued to put out small fires that were ignited in the succeeding days because of the open electric wiring and because of the jet fuel, pockets of jet fuel that was found throughout on the first floor. So that's what I wanted to talk about with you a little bit regarding the fires and the damage that it caused in the Pentagon on September 11th.
And I'll never forget the first thing that we did was kind of look for survivors in the rubble in this area. And so I believe it was the Army Corps of Engineers that same exact day determined that there were no survivors. And so we were pulling rubble out of there, and eventually we did get to a point where kind of all of that damage was gone, and we eventually started to get inside the building.
Is that what you guys wore there? Could that have been you?
That could have been me. In fact, that is exactly what we wore. And I've got a few additional pictures to.
If this was you, you would know it. You would know that's you. How could you not know it's you?
Kind of show that, but you know, what you're seeing is kind of how everything looked on the inside. It burned, you know, to the core of the buildings. In some spots, like these file cabinets, I believe, right here to the left, you know, they were unfazed.
They don't look
unfazed.
I mean,
yeah. Wait a minute. Unfazed, they're burned. I don't understand. But first of all, we don't even know if this is the first floor, second floor. I don't know. I couldn't tell you. Let's just say it is the first floor. What wing? How far is this from the impact damage? You couldn't tell from this picture. I couldn't tell you, right? I couldn't tell you whether this was near the impact. Obviously, it's not near the impact point. So this is at some distance in some office within the Pentagon. Was it 200 feet away? 300? 400?
Yeah, well, you know what I'm saying? They were not totally destroyed. But
okay.
as you're going to see, you know, unfazed is actually a word that you can use for some of the different pictures I'm going to show you, which always kind of stood out to me as being a little strange. But, you know, more pictures of people like myself, you know, on site, wearing the suits.
Well, how do you know this? You know, again, we don't know this is you. I mean, all the pictures that you've shown so far are basically that you can find on the internet. Now, I don't know if you took pictures or if you know someone who took pictures and that we'd never seen before. I'd like to see that.
You know, there was a lot of different members of a lot of different agencies there, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, local fire departments. I think there was a lot of different government agents that weren't wearing any types of accreditations, but there was just a lot of different people around on site. You know, kind of getting further into the Pentagon itself, you know, this picture, I'm assuming just based on the look of it, is further into the rings. As you can see here, the types of debris that we were finding, you know, I know plane parts. I'm familiar with them. I've stored them. I've shipped them. I've inspected them. But what you're looking at is really the types of things that we were finding. You know,
Okay, judging from this picture alone, right? Judging just from this picture, you couldn't tell. You can't tell. There's lots of charred remains here. Again, I don't know how far away from the impact point that is. I couldn't tell, but that's definitely the first floor because you can see the beams. Some of them are buckling in the far background. So I'm willing to say that this is at some point, at some distance of the impact point, because you do have pictures of the impact point near it, and you could see the obvious damage. So, I mean, you were talking about the different agencies, like Arlington County Fire Department, Fort Myers Fire Department, Ronald Reagan Airport Fire Department, Virginia Medical Technician Team, the District of Columbia Fire Department, Fairfax Search and Rescue, Montgomery County Search and Rescue, Fort Belvoir Transportation Division, Urban Search and Rescue from Fairfax and Montgomery counties, as well as FBI, FEMA, Virginia EMS, Washington, D.C. Park Police, Pentagon Police, and just, hundred. I could sit here for the next 21 minutes and read you a list of different people and agencies that were there. I have written down, I take notes when I write or read books, documents. Here's a notebook. I always take notes whenever I read books or read the articles online, just to remind myself of different things I learned over the time so I can verify what I'm learning.
I just think that if a very large commercial airline, or airplane were to fly into, a building, I would have seen a heck of a lot more. But
okay, this is contradictory to the eyewitness testimonies of people who found plane debris. Okay, now one of them is a fireman, which we're gonna read the article together. Okay, so I'm gonna share this article by the Washington Post. And this is just one instance. I'm not going to I'm going to try and cut down the repetitive nature of throwing out 1,000 names, but I want to show you this article. It's written on September 19, 2001 by Tom Jackman, Washington Post. Okay, as they trudged through the smoky darkness in a Pentagon C ring shortly after 4 a.m., Fairfax County firefighters Carlton Burkhammer and Brian Moravitz scanned the debris with their helmet lights, still hopeful of finding someone alive. Moments after spotting a chair from the cockpit of Flight 77, their beams flashed on 2 charred black boxes. Burkhammer and Moravitz glanced at each other through their steamy plastic face shields. Is that what we think it is? They radioed for federal investigators who confirmed the discovery of the plane's voice and data recorder systems. And the FBI was first on the scene. The FBI lead investigator on the scene is Chris Combs. He's second in command. He's actually second in command next to Jason Schwartz. Schwartz is in command of the local and local fire departments, okay? Because he's the actual first chief on site. So he's in charge, he's in command. Then you have Chris Combs, federal agent, Washington, D.C. office. He's in charge of the investigation, in charge of search and rescue, in charge of collecting human remains. Okay. When they found this, the 2 firemen found this, they contacted the FBI. Chris Combs came and he had a liaison officer with him, and they called the National Transportation Safety Board, okay, because they could identify the boxes. And an official came from the NTSB and said, yes, those are from Flight 77. And the cockpit voice recorder that they found was so badly damaged, it couldn't get anything from it. But the flight data recorder, they managed to transcribe the data. And I showed the radar data, the flight data from the satellites, from radar ground. It's in the NTSB report, and that's from the flight data recorder. And I don't have to keep reading any more of these articles. I mean, what else do you want? You want plane debris? They found it. I mean, God's sakes, it was all over the place. Should I even show pictures? I guess so. Let's look at plane debris, right? Here's a picture of it, file. Look. 2 guys running around. Are they planting? Broad daylight. So look, here's fuselage. Look, more in the background. Markings. There's a red marking on there. Look, fuselage. One picture. Fuselage. Fuselage. Look, firemen. Same picture. This is the generator. which is on fire. First floor, impact hole right here. Wing damage. You can see the markings of where the wing hit. This is the hole, not a very small one. Roof of the plane, body of the plane, wings, impact damage right here. The blast is enormous, just enormous. Look at this piece of the plane. American Airlines, AA. Look, a piece of the landing gear underneath tons of rubble. Landing gear. More fuselage. Here, this is Chris Sarnes. This is an invaluable photo. This is before the collapse of the west of the impact point. As you can see, 71 feet height, 96 feet between the whole, 141 feet of damage. Look at this, 141 feet. I think a Boeing 767-222 series is 127 feet wide. Here's a rotator cuff of the engine. Basically, this is what was left of it. And you can see all these markings here. This is where the propellers are, right here. All this right here. It's all sheared off. It's destroyed. And you basically said in the video, well, that's too small of an engine. No, this is what was left of the engine. It's called the shear fan. That's what's left, the turbo fan. I'm sorry, turbo fan. Here's, you mentioned about the impact hole. I didn't see any plane debris. Look, here's a landing gear wheel. More fuselage. This is probably from in front of the plane. More pieces of the plane. There's one guy, he's actually holding a piece of plane. Look, markings. All identifiable for American Airlines. Look, a piece of the plane right here. Cordoned off. Looks like that's a piece of the wing. FBI photos showing the impact point. All right, you get the picture, right? I mean, I could just keep showing you articles of people who were there and saw the plane, impact. In fact, I'll just do it again, just because, oh, that guy's lying, stuff like that. Here's an article written by the Freelance Star. This guy is Pentagon survivor John Yates reflects on 9/11 impact. So I'm going to read you a part of the article. On September 11, 2001, Yates was the civilian security manager in the Army's Office of Deputy Chief of Staff for Personnel working on the second floor, just off Corridor 4. At about 9:30 that morning, a coworker asked if he heard about what was happening in New York City. He walked to her workspace to watch footage of two commercial jet liners crashing World Trade Center. He stepped away to call his wife, make sure she knew what happened. I love you, blah, blah, right? Former soldier was getting up to leave when he heard an explosion louder than any tank, artillery piece of rocket around. The jet had crashed into the Pentagon 100 feet from where he was. A ball of fire hurled him 30 feet through the air. Yates crawled through the debris. The carpet of the floor was so hot that it burned the prints off his fingertips. The smoke so thick it turned everything black. Something covered his glasses. He realized later it was jet fuel. Yeah, I mean, Adam, come on, right? Let's go back to the end.
This is the type of scene that it was really.
This is a great picture, right? Look, here is the West. This is the West, right? Look at the beams. Where are they pointing to? To A&E Drive. Force blasted through here, charred everything, destroyed everything on the first floor. These are offices, totally gone. Totally gone. The Naval Annex office, destroyed over its foundations almost. The only thing left standing are these huge, massive beams. And they survived the force of the explosion. Not so much because this whole area collapsed. So it collapsed at 10:10, 9:37 was the impact, 9:36. So almost, what's that? 34 minutes. 34 minutes before this all collapsed. Look, and you could see, like, look, the plane is going from where my mouse is, right? This is where the plane's going. Boom, straight through. Look at where everything is pointing to.
I mean, who knows? How do you replicate a plane hitting the Pentagon without, actually sending a plane into the Pentagon?
You don't need to. You just need to look at the damage, look at the debris, and go 2 + 2 = 4.
So a lot of people out there have always said, well, if there's a lot of different pictures.
Let's see. 88 people who were outside the Pentagon, who were in the vicinity of the Pentagon, on the freeway and near the buildings, and in their homes near the building, saw the plane. The plane impacted the building. When the plane impacted the building, it basically, and I'll even read off the damage that it did from the Arlington after action report. I'll even read you. Did I close it out? No, I didn't. Okay, hold on. Okay. The instant the plane's nose struck the outer wall of the Pentagon, it ceased to be an airplane, right? This is what I was talking about. When the plane hits something at a high rate of speed, fully loaded, like I showed you before with German wings and with PSA 1771, you could legitimately look at those scenes and say, what plane? The nose of the plane hit the facade just below the top of the first story, about 14 feet above ground, going 530 miles an hour, okay? Now, I'm going to provide you this after action report so you can read it, so you don't think that I'm making this up, okay? A deafening boom shook the morning as a violent concussion tore through the air, jarring bystanders in the building. The collision produced a force on the passengers far greater than that from any high-speed car crash, okay? For example, the plane cabin, back of the plane, here's the nose, right? Here's the people. The people in the business center and the back of the plane all became part of the front of the plane in less than a second. Now just think, Adam Eisenberg, just think. How on earth could a human body survive that? With that rate of speed, with that much jet fuel, with that much force, with that much speed, and the ensuing explosion. The people became projectiles. Bones separated from flesh, body parts flew as it was fired from a cannon. When it hit the building, the fuselage crumpled immediately. The soft aluminum disintegrated as it encountered layers of limestone, which was what Pentagon was made of, not concrete, it was limestone. Brick and one sheet layer of concrete in the back of the wall, and a blast-resistant geotextile lining. The steel reinforced concrete columns that we saw in the picture that held up the building and everything else in its path. In an instant, the impact reduced Flight 77 to 1 million superheated fragments. 2/3 of the right wing had been severed by the impact, with the construction equipment and what was left of it carved a gash in the building's second floor slab before the concrete sheared it off from the fuselage. At least 1/3 of the left wing had snapped off when the left engine hit the steam bolt. The rest of it slid into the Pentagon beneath the second-story floor slab, penetrating no farther than a few feet. The airplane's tail, 45 feet tall, was still attached to the plane as it plowed into the Pentagon initially. But like the stubs of the wings, its soft aluminum was abruptly shredded when it collided with the limestone and concrete. The horizontal stabilizers, the smaller wings at the back of the plane, didn't make much of an impact either. They may have penetrated farther than the front wings since they were being dragged into a hole, but they were too broke apart quickly. The aircraft was carrying 5,300 gallons of fuel in 3 fuel tanks, 27,000 pounds. That's amazing. That's a lot. one in the fuselage, one in each wing. The wing tanks were spewing fuel before the plane even struck the building. At the moment of impact, about 720 gallons of fuel ignited outside the building, sending the fireball twice the size of the Pentagon, which we saw in the security camera video. Fire instantly charred the grass and trees lining the outer wall. Burning wreckage flew across the lawn. Chunks of metal rained down. A mushroom cloud followed the blast high into the sky. As the belly of the plane penetrated the first floor, another 4,450 gallons of fuel exploded in a blast far more powerful than the initial fireball. This is what the people in the hallway that I spoke to you about, I read the testimonies, that knocked them off their feet, okay? Shock waves hurtled down the hallway. Part of the second story concrete floor slab buckled like a bent flap on a cardboard box. Fuel spilled into every space that physics would allow. Much of it lit off instantaneously as fire raced through fourth space, air vents, stairwells at nearly the speed of sound. That's all I need to read to you. This is coming from the Army Corps of Engineers, from the Pentagon Incident Response Team, FEMA, as well as the Pentagon Renovation Project Team led by Lee Eve. This is all the reports and data that they collected on the day and the day's events. Let's go back.
And theories that exist as far as, plane destruction. I don't even want to go there, but I'm just here to say that, these are the types of images that you're seeing. And if you look to the right of this picture right here, you can tell.
To you, it explained perfectly. I'm so glad you showed this picture. What I read to you perfectly is what happened here in this picture. The slabs right here buckled. And I'm sorry, I said this was the damage, the collapse point. I'm exhausted, but I was in error. This is not the collapse point. This is right where the wings hit. Collapse point is much further north. This is way west, because you could see the makeshift slabs that were holding the building up, this part up, and you could see the tape.
This is really where the entry hole was.
No,
and so
no, I made a mistake. No, it's not. This is where the wings hit. This is where the wings hit. It's not the impact point, because it's not collapsed. And you can see, like I said, the tape, the makeshift beams that were built to support this from collapsing.
This right here is, as Richard was kind enough to share with me, I was calling it something else. This wood shoring was established, and we'll see in some other pictures, to provide additional support to the structure.
Right.
So where you're looking
because if the columns were damaged, and you can see through underneath these beams along the top, running toward and away from us, there's a couple or three columns that you can see, and the other ones are missing. I mean, they're just clearly broken off. You can point your mouse.
Right, and for those who believe it was a missile, listen, missile doesn't do this much damage extensively. It doesn't leave behind jet fuel either, and it can knock down 5 light poles.
To the reinforcing to the left, right there, up, right. That was a.
Like I want to ask you too, Adam Eisenberg, because I don't know, right? What caused this damage? A bomb? There's no blast characteristics, and a bomb doesn't leave behind jet fuel. I mean, you really did yourself a disservice by making that statement. Because I told you about the options, what you have to do now. Either all those witnesses are lying, they were coerced, or they're mistaken.
Column where the reinforcing is coming out of the beam up above. So it was completely destroyed. Now, what I like to point out is that if a plane came from the right to the left, it seems conceivable to me that those columns would take a beating in the direction that it looks like actually happened.
Because this is not the impact point, Richard, right? I don't want to make it about Richard Gage. This is not the impact point. This is where the wing hit. I don't know if this is the left or right, whether it's north or south. You can't tell from this picture.
And they're in other words, they're bowed to the left. So I just wanted to point that out as a possibility. If explosions can do that, that would.
You know what? I think. You know what I'm going to do? I'll play right here. You know, it's going to be a longer video than I should, but I really want to. I really want to show. Like, I really want to show. Where is it? Where are we? 28 minutes, 25 seconds. So I want to show one video. Like it was the Pentagon impact. You know what? I'll wait. I'm going to wait for that. Where is it? Just to hold on to it. Is this it? Let me see something. I just want to see something. Because it had like rare like pictures of the inside of the Pentagon damage. And I think, is this it here? Yeah, this is it. Should I play it now? Why not? I mean, why not, right? Okay, so okay, hold on. Let me do this real quick for you. Real quick. Okay, so here's Rear Admiral Craig Quigley, Pentagon spokesman, and Lee Evey, by the way, comes up. Wait a minute, hold on.
So that's the intention this morning. And Terry, over to you.
Okay. We can go ahead and roll the tape, please. As Admiral Quigley said, this was shot by Air Force combat cameraman yesterday
Lee Evey, he's speaking.
Afternoon.
See, this is what I was talking about. All right, so here's the. Go up more. I want to show you something.
As Admiral Quigley said, this was shot by Air Force combat cameraman yesterday after.
Okay, that's the guy I told you about. So here's fire traveling. What you know, because Adam does state, why don't we see fires here? And why don't we see fires here? Because these are not connected. These are floors, right? So here they knocked out the holes in these buildings. The firemen from Arlington County and Fort Myer, Ronald Reagan Airport. Then later Fort Belvoir and Fort. The other one, Fort Belvoir, regarding the shear holes I was talking about, and that made the fire stop from the spread.
Afternoon. You can see evidence of fire damage along the corridors.
Because it shows you rare video I never saw before, only on here. So. It was taken, I think, like.
This is corridor 5 up here.
It's 5 and 4.
Look at that, and you saw. Forget it.
I think it would be 5 and 6.
Okay.
Some of the damage at the entrance there. The wall behind this is sheared off. That's why it's daylight just streaming into the office there.
Can you say at what level this is? Like on the first floor? Or
This is on the
higher?
fifth floor.
Fifth floor. The fifth floor. The fifth floor. That's from the explosion, not from the plane.
You can see this room here. This is one of the older windows. You can see how it's blasted.
Right, exactly. This was a blast-resistant window. Look how the window is sheared inward. Right? Look at that.
In with the Venetian blinds in the
Man,
back.
anybody was sitting there. Right.
This is on the E-ring here. This is between the E-ring and the D-ring.
I never saw that.
You can see this wall here is is falling in toward the outside of the building. As you can see here, this office is open to the elements now, but there's stuff sitting on top of the file cabinets and on the desk in that office. So it survived all the initial impact, and the person in here could have just walked right out.
Some people suffocated.
This is one of the unrenovated rooms. You can see the plastic on the fluorescent light has melted down because of the fire.
Look at, I mean, that is incredible heat. That the plastic on top of the fluorescent lighting melted.
This is one of the unrenovated rooms. You can see the
Bomb didn't
plastic
do that,
on the fluorescent light has melted down because of the fire. And this was on the opposite side of the impact.
So that happened on the opposite side of the impact. That tells you how hot the fire was. I wonder what caused that. Jet fuel?
You can see some of the fire damage here. This is in one of the unrenovated spaces.
That's why they were jumping out of the World Trade Center. On the higher floors. Jet fuel and office furnishings. First of all, the smell would have been just unimaginable. And the heat, just incredible.
More fire damage in the unrenovated spaces. Again, another office just opened up to the elements where the entrance sheared off.
Glasses and coffee.
You can see someone's glasses here and some candy on the desk. This area back here, what you see here, that's the roof that has fallen in the back. This is on the first floor. This is very close to where the airplane went into. You can see the evidence of some of the different shoring that they're using in order to shore up the building. The way they described it to me is they come in, they remove some debris, they shore it up, they move in further, they move some debris, they shore it up. And it reminded me of being like in a coal mine filled with metal shards all over the place. You can see some of the working conditions they're under here. There's water all over the floor, metal shards all over the floor, and having to work through and shoring up all the system.
How are breathing conditions down there? I see them wearing OBAs. Are they?
Well, they're not wearing OBAs, they're wearing respirators. We had to, in order to go in, we had to suit up just like they did in order to go into this area. Now, once they've cleared the area, make sure all the bodies are out, they go in with a bobcat, and they're removing metal and everything they can as fast as they can to get in. This is evidence. This is one of the columns that is in the Pentagon, and you can see how it's bent this way here, but the rebar is holding it together.
And is that solid steel?
No, it's not solid steel. It's a cement column.
Is it your understanding? We know.
It's more to the right of where we were at. This is this is in a renovated section on the opposite side. If you were facing the opposite side, this is a hole in that was a punch out. They suspect that this was part of the aircraft came through this hole, although I didn't see any evidence of the aircraft down there.
And which area is that?
This is right inside the E-ring.
You see any evidence of the aircraft anywhere?
Yes, I did. You could see just small pieces of it.
But how far in? Again, we're trying to figure out how it came into the building.
video first? Then we'll go back.
You see someone from the Montgomery County unit here. This pile here is all Pentagon
Right.
metal. None of that is aircraft whatsoever.
Right. The aircraft debris was put in A&E Drive.
But you can see they've punched a hole in here. This is punched by the rescue workers to clean it out. But you can see this is some of the unrenovated areas where the windows have blown out. Got soldiers from the 3rd U.S. Infantry, the Honor Guard, are in there. And this is the conditions they have to work in, the Tyvek suits, the respirators, goggles, and helmets. And they also have boots on them as well.
Okay, so I showed you enough, and you get the picture. Okay, plane debris, massive damage, the damage that happened on the inside of the building, how much extensive damage, and you claim to say that there wasn't very much extensive damage. Well, I just showed you evidence that the damage not only happened on the 1st floor, but it also happened on the 5th floor. On the 5th floor. Where are we?
I'll never forget.
Okay, so I gotta find out.
Signs what's so.
Okay, so I'll start here because you were right around here. So yeah, I mean, come on, Adam. I mean, really, at this point, you know, that you didn't smell jet fuel, and there's dozens of people who smelled jet fuel. You didn't see much damage, dude. There's damage to all 5 floors. I just showed you that. There's even video evidence of it. That's why I played that video. So yeah, I mean, Adam, come on, man. At this point.
Yeah, I don't know how you distinguish between a body part that was a Pentagon employee and a body that was in the plane.
Easy. You're not going to find a whole body from people in the plane. Plain and simple. And I just explained why. Because the plane is going so fast and it's carrying so much fuel that it basically exploded into minuscule pieces. The biggest piece of the plane they found was the turbofan.
I mean, I don't know that you would be able to or appropriately determine that by what they were wearing.
Well, they did, because the FBI agent in charge of the morgue and the FBI agent Chris Combs, Tara Blosh of the morgue and Chris Combs of the FBI, and basically the Fairfax and Montgomery search and rescue divisions, they were in charge of human remains at the site. And I go back to the beginning of the video. I showed you the names of the people working in these agencies. They were able to distinguish that because when they got the flight, when they found out who was on the plane, they basically asked DNA samples from the victims' families, and they discerned. Now, 189 people were killed at the Pentagon incident. They recognized 184 of those victims. 5 basically were liquidated in the impact of the plane.
Were most of the people wearing uniforms, for instance?
Well, and when I said these, I meant like, when we found bodies, it didn't look like they had been, really truly like, hit a wall, mangled at, 400, 500 plus miles per hour. They were all kind of.
You ever been hit against a wall at 500 miles an hour, Adam Eisenberg? You're basically reduced to nothing. Imagine that with a fireball right behind it. Like I said, in the after-action report, the people in the back of the plane became the front of the plane in less than a second. In less than a second. That means they didn't even have time to think. It just happened. You ain't going to find a whole body.
In these buildings, some of which were.
You know what they found? They found a lot of shoes belonging to the people on the plane. Shoes. What does that tell you, right? That there was a bunch of shoes in the plane? No. That these people basically disintegrated on impact.
Were in rooms that still had form. They had just, maybe burned to the core of the iron core of the building into the foundation. But yeah, never anything that looked like, uniforms. Never saw any luggage.
No, that's not true. I mean, they found luggage on the Pentagon. They found debris and luggage of people. let me read you Washington Post, search for remains at Pentagon. Army engineers, Army Corps of Engineers at 1730. What would it be like that? What was that? 5:30? 6:30? On September 11th, stated that there were no survivors, right? Okay. And Army soldiers actually from Fort Belvoir, they were the first teams to survey the interior of the crash site, and they were the ones who noted the presence of remains. When they did that, they asked the FBI, who were there, headed by Chris Combs, to put a flag there to, identify, hey, this is where human remains are. Don't, come with a bobcat or shovels and destroy it. Now you had FEMA, Urban Search and Rescue from Fairfax and Montgomery. They assisted in the search for remains, and they worked through the NIMS. What's the name of that? The National Incident Management System, I think. Now, there's another photographer. I told you about the photographers. There's another one from the Navy, Department of the Navy. His name is Kevin Rimrod. And he was surveying the Navy Command Center where most of the damage was at. And he remarked that there were so many bodies in the Navy annex that he almost stepped on them. So he'd really have to take care if he stepped backwards in the dark when he had a flashlight. And the debris from the Pentagon was taken to the Pentagon's north parking lot for the detailed search of remains of evidence. Now, I saw that you mentioned this in the Gage video, so I'll talk about that in a bit. Now, human remains that were identified by the FBI and Fairfax and the Fairfax Urban Search and Rescue, they were photographed, right, and then they were turned over to the Armed Forces Medical Examiner Office at the Dover Air Force Base, headed by Tara Bush. And the medical examiner's office was able to identify remains belonging to 179 of the victims, but that they eventually identified 184 of the 189. The remains of the 5 hijackers were identified through a process of elimination because they couldn't get the DNA of the victims' family, of the hijackers' families. They didn't ask for DNA. So they couldn't identify them specifically. And that went with all, by the way, that went with all the hijackers' families. So that was who was in charge of the search for human remains and stuff like that. So I just wanted to bring that up. Play.
Any personal effects or anything like that that one might carry on a flight? Never saw any of it.
Things like that.
Nothing. So
how about seats from an airplane?
Seats from an airplane. So I never personally with my eyes saw anything. But I give credit where credit is due. There is one person that claims that he saw. This is a guy that I know claims that he saw a seat. And I asked him, what did it look like? He just said, well, it just looked like it was an airplane seat.
Well, I could read you more than that. I mean, I told you about the Pentagon flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder, right? So now, talk to you about other people who saw other things. So, okay. Let me, okay, I found it. All right. Various pieces of the aircraft, like, for example, Navy Command Center, Lieutenant Colonel Kevin Schaefer, identified a chunk of the aircraft's nose cone and the nose landing gear on the service road between rings B and C. Right now, this is from, see if the article is still up. It is. Okay, let me share it so that you don't think I'm reading, nonsense. Okay, inside the Pentagon 9/11, the Call of Duty, pilot online. Here's Kevin Sheep. Schaefer stood on a service road that circled the Pentagon between the B and C rings. A chunk of the 757's nose cone and front landing gear lay on the pavement a few feet away, resting against a B ring wall. For a second, it seemed he had left his body, was watching the scene from above. And, just to show you that he saw it, right? Should I mention? I was thinking, should I mention the eyewitnesses yet? No. You know what? I'll just play the interview.
In which I kind of said, a lot of guys in my unit, came to me when I first started to, really talk, and they said, this is what I saw. And that one guy said that, and I just kind of asked him, where are the rest of the seats? There's a lot of different, seats on an airplane, but yeah, a lot of people kind of fall into one of three camps. Either they say, they don't remember it, they've kind of compartmentalized it. They say that they don't remember seeing anything. And then, like I said, the third camp is the guy that I talked about that said that he saw, a chair.
But during that month.
Yeah, I just named you a couple of people like Boring Moritz, Carlton Berkhammer, Kevin Schaefer. God's sakes, man. I mean, dude, there's a number of people that found plane debris all throughout the first floor. Like I said, I could sit here and just throw out a whole bunch of names at you, right? And just, bore you with so many different reports. God, hold on. Let me see if I can get you more. Oh, that's not enough names. Right? I'm going to look down this list. It's such a long list. People seeing different things and stuff. So, 6. I don't want to waste, I don't want to pause and, make this longer than I should. But this video is based on, a last second. Okay. This is also on the John Judge list. I'm going to provide again to you so you can read it for yourself. Tom McLean. I saw, you know what? I'm just going to share it so you don't claim I'm just making stuff up. Okay, let me blow it up so you can read together. I saw the remains of the engines in the north parking lot of the Pentagon, as well as melted aluminum and other debris left from the aircraft. Charles Kroon. One of the aircraft engines somehow ricocheted out of the building and arched into the Pentagon's small parking area between the main building and the new loading dock facility. The Army's Deputy Chief of Public Affairs. Michael Tamalow. FBI evidence teams combing the area of impact along the building's perimeter found parts of the fuselage from the Boeing 757. So Michael Tamalow, Battalion Chief and Search and Rescue Expert from Fairfax County. as the fireball got higher and higher, you saw the debris go up in the air. I'm watching this in my rearview mirror. And then I thought, oh my God, there's debris coming toward me. Next thing you know, I heard this big crash come from somewhere. It sounded like glass being shattered, and thought maybe at first it was one of my windows. I popped, looked, everything was fine. When I looked to the car next to me, I realized that something went through the car's rear windshield and shattered it. Then bolted on the guy in front of me, looked at his rear windshield, saw it was about a 4-inch hole in it, and the rest of the window was shattered. Someone took a baseball bat to it. At that point, I didn't know it was a plane. I thought it was a missile strike pulling away from the Pentagon. There was tons of stuff on the ground, big pieces of metal, concrete, everything. We got up to a certain point, and it was this huge piece of something. I mean, it was big. It looked like a piece of an engine. Alan Wallace. By the way, Alan Wallace is a Fort Myers fireman who was at the heliport. And he ducked when the plane came in. I'm going to play his video interview with you. The ground was on fire. Trees were on fire. Hot slices of aluminum were everywhere. Wallace could hear voices crying for help and moved toward him. People were coming out a window, head first, landing on him. He was faced incoming fire. He was with the hospital, blah, blah, blah. Tim Timmerman, pilot saw the impact. Tim Timmerman said it had been an American Airways 757. It had power on its way in. The nose hit. The wings came forward and went up in a fireball. A piece of twisted aircraft fuselage lay nearby. Tony Terranes pulling away from the Pentagon. There were tons of stuff on the ground, big pieces of metal, concrete, everything. We got up to a certain point. It was a huge piece of something. I mean, we spoke to this guy. Joel Shukerman saw an American Airlines jetliner fly left to right across his field of vision as he could muted to work Tuesday morning. Ironically, the passage of emergency fields got traffic moving again, which was now crunching over twisted metal. Guessed was the skin of the plane. Frank Probst, Pentagon renovation worker and retired Army officer. On either side of him, 3 street lights had been sheared in half by the airliner's wings at 12 to 15 above ground. Engine had clipped the antenna off a Jeep Grand Cherokee, stalled in traffic not far away. I dove towards the ground, watched this great big engine from this beautiful airplane just vaporize. Don Fortunato. Traffic was at a standstill. He's a police officer. So I worked on the shoulder not far from the scene and ran to the site. Next to me was a cab from DC. Its windshield smashed by big pieces of lampposts. Hey, who's that? Lloyd England. There were pieces of the plane all over the highway. Pieces of wing, I think. Dude, I could look at all these names. Enough. Let's go back to the interview.
That you were there for 20 days. You must have been talking to each other and because saying, does this look like an airplane crash to you? I mean, was there any kind of chatter like
you would know that if you basically interviewed the people who were there, right? Now you interviewed this guy, he claims he was there. He claims that everyone else that I just named is lying or forced to coerce or they're misinformed. How many names did I read off today?
There was, and you know,
if this was a case, you'd lose, Adam Eisenberg, right? If this was an actual court case, you're getting crushed at this point. Like I said, I'm not attacking you, dude. I'm showing you evidence. We only have you. You're making a claim that not only a plane didn't hit the Pentagon, that there was no evidence jet fuel, that there was minimal damage or not as much extensive damage as you would think, and that there was no location of plane debris. I just read off a listing, videos, testimonies, everything that contradict everything you're saying here today. And we're almost halfway through.
Kind of mentioned when we were talking prior to this,
who's going to believe you, right? If this was a court of law, it was me versus you, who's actually bringing more evidence? I am. It's a matter of deduction here, Adam Eisenberg, right? That's all this is. I got more evidence on my side. You don't. I got more eyewitnesses on my side. You don't.
A few people made some small comments like, wow, this isn't what it seems. But the thought that the United States government could ever do something like this never at that point in time really crossed our minds. Everybody was just kind of still in shock.
Do what? What'd they do? You didn't even explain what you thought caused this damage. I may have missed it, but not in this video.
My thoughts on that changing really started to progress, as I watched things.
Because you never saw an intentional plane crash in your life. This is a rare anomaly. It's never happened before in the United States, where an Arab fundamentalist crashed intentionally a plane into a U.S. target. Now, like I said, we have PSA 1771, where a disgruntled employee took controls of the plane with a handgun and he crashed the plane. This is different. We saw this 4 times. Intentional plane crashes 4 times, where the plane was going fully loaded with kerosene and going at a high rate of speed. Of course, if you see, like I said before, you're comparing other plane crashes to this, and that you can't do that. You ever hear the phrase, no two snowflakes look alike? Well, yeah, in this case, it's exactly the case, because this wasn't a case where the plane was trying to land safely.
Happen, and that's a whole other topic of discussion, but it's really, it was hard to come to the conclusion, that I did, but the airplane parts experience really helped it. But yeah, it's just one of those things where I always felt that this thing didn't really happen the way.
Be careful with your words, right? I'm always listening for words, right? I always felt, I always believed in my heart. I know so. All these mean nothing. Your opinions, your speculations don't mean anything. The only thing that matters are facts from non-facts, evidence and non-evidence, knowledge and belief. In a court of law, the only thing that matters is information, evidence, knowledge. They don't entertain speculation. They don't entertain belief. What you believe happened here is irrelevant. We know what happened here through physical evidence, eyewitness evidence, technical evidence, the data from the flight data code, as well as the data from radar and satellite regarding the FAA and the air traffic control. They were in contact with this plane. In the beginning, they had conversations with the pilot at Indianapolis ATC. So I don't know what your position is to contradict what happened here. Maybe you did. I missed it in an interview. Maybe you bring it up. I don't know, but you still haven't explained what did this. Wasn't a bomb. Wasn't a missile. Nobody experienced this. There's nothing to show that neither one of this happened. There wasn't a flyover. Nobody saw that either. What are you left with?
The mainstream, media says it did, the way the world thinks it did, but I just never really thought I was in a position to do anything about it. Now that the world is kind of experiencing what it is, and that's a whole other topic of discussion in and of itself. I point to events like this and I scream foul play, just because, I can't forget what I did not see while I was on site for that extended amount of time.
What's funny is that you scream foul play, you're against the government, right? So am I, okay? Here's the difference, is that you actually absolve the intelligence agencies from 9/11. Now, let me explain why. You're asking yourself, well, how did I do that? Okay, if you don't believe that this plane was hijacked, Flight 77 that crashed at Pentagon, if you don't believe that the plane even crashed here, right? What you're saying, in essence, is that the people who are monitoring these hijackers, the CIA, the NSA, who listened to phone calls of Osama bin Laden and the Al-Qaeda communications up in Yemen, and the cell phone of Nawaf al-Hazmi, who was on Flight 77. The Israeli Mossad, who were using moving front companies in Florida, in New Jersey, in New York, that were tracking these guys. The Saudi General Intelligence Directorate, who had Saudi officials like Omar al-Bayoumi, Osama Basnan, Fahad al-Dumeri, Saeed al-Jarrah, who were funding Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi, who were hijackers of Flight 77. So if Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi weren't on these planes, you basically did the following: that all these people that were monitoring these hijackers aren't monitoring and financing anyone. That means that the CIA and the NSA weren't listening or weren't following these people, not just here in the United States and abroad, because who are they following and following? There's no hijackers. So in essence, with your position, you basically absolved the CIA, the NSA, the Israeli Mossad, Saudi GID from having any connection with 9/11 whatsoever. Not just complicity, foreknowledge even. Because what information are they listening to? There's no hijackers. There's no affiliates with the hijackers. There's nothing, according to you. None of these agencies, none of these operations like Able Danger, which was a defense intelligence agency operation about collecting metadata on the hijackers themselves. Oh, that doesn't exist. There's no hijackers. How about the CIA's Alex Station, which is a code name for Bin Laden Issue Station, which were monitoring who? Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden and the Hamburg cell and the Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi. Well, if there's no hijackers, that means they're not running these operations. That means this station doesn't exist. Because who are they monitoring? You see the faults of your position? That it doesn't just rest at the Pentagon, but it rests outside of it. That's connected to pre-9/11. You understand? So in other words, you may be thinking that you're against the government. You're actually working in line with the government. Not you personally. I'm not saying you, but the government's actually doing this by you talking. Thank you. Thank you for not believing that we had intelligence agencies monitoring these people years prior. Thank you for not believing we had operations monitoring these people inside the United States without the State Department's knowledge or the FBI. Thank you. Thank you from Israel and Saudi Arabia, basically, who were running their own operations outside the NSA, I think, maybe, or maybe in line with the NSA, for not believing that they were monitoring the hijackers from day one inside the United States. You don't believe in hijackers. See, Adam Eisenberg, why I'm so exasperated with people who make these statements. It just goes against the enormous weight of evidence against you. It just goes to repeat generationally, 21 years down the line, Adam, and we're still talking about no planes and hijackers. Is that the reason why no Lloyd's committee is a failure? They're a failure. They can't even win in the Southern District of New York. They're still trying to be heard. Richard Gage, what is Richard Gage doing? Is he going to court with this remarkable evidence? How about the evidence that you have? This remarkable, unimaginable, this would shatter 9/11 in itself. Instead of going to independent media, I'm not even talking about the legacy media. I'm talking about independent media. How about the Empire Files, run by Abby Warren? Democracy Now! Even. No? Al Jazeera? Press TV. Those are Arab stations. They run your shit real quick. What did you do? You went to Richard Gage. You went to people who already believe what you believe. That's my problem with you. If you were honest, you'd actually go to those agencies first. Now, you said you're going to write a book. Anyone can write a book. Let me give you an example. There's a guy named Dean Hartwell. His books are banned on Amazon. Why? He wrote one book called 9/11 the Movie, because what he thinks is that everybody who was on the planes and their family members were all actors. And then 9/11 was a movie. Planes were holograms made by Hollywood. Yeah, he wrote a book, 9/11 the movie. He wrote another book, Pastures Without Planes. Nobody was flying the plane, he said. So yeah, anyone can write a book, anyone. I was told to write a book. I don't think much of myself, right? I'm a small channel. You know, I'd rather have it that way too. But yeah, you understand where I'm going with this, right? If you had evidence that supports your beliefs, you wouldn't be going to Richard Gage. You wouldn't be going to these small-time YouTube channels that I saw you did like 2 or 3 interviews. You'd be going exactly where I said you would be going, where you should be going to. There are media agencies that don't work for the government, not influenced by the government, not influenced by politics. They're out there. It's just that you don't have evidence for any of your claims. None of your statements. No evidence whatsoever.
Gotcha. Okay, well, I'm holding you up. You can roll forward if you want.
Yeah, so kind of just going through more of the pictures here, you know, I always ask myself.
Okay, these are all pictures you find online. Do you have any pictures that are like, you know, I'm saying even from people that you know that took pictures. You have any rare pictures that we haven't seen before? These are all pictures you can find online. Just like how I showed you Flight 77 debris. You know, you can find.
You know, if the actual mainstream media says that, you know, a plane went screaming through the E-ring all the way through, you know, I look at pictures like this and I ask myself, you know, where are the plane parts?
Okay. You're looking at pictures from days later, even probably a week or 2 later, all right? The cleanup, here's the plane debris, right here, the North parking lot. Okay, all right, this is part of the, okay, let's look.
Example like this as well, you know, just you can see where the fires kind of broke out and kind of traveled along the edges of the roof line, and how you can kind of tell the fires kind of broke out and were kind of going down in here. You know, where was the plane parts? Well, a lot of people don't know. If you look right here, you can see a bunch of people in little white biohazardous suits. Well, that's because a lot of these people, I'm assuming, were bringing debris out.
Right.
And this
Well,
pile.
Wait, aren't you one of them?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Well, I can't say that I was one of them actually, but yes.
Well, wait a minute. Let's reverse that back for a second, Adam. I'm sorry, I'm not, this is not ingesting you, but let's just play this again.
We're bringing debris out, and this
Well,
pile.
Wait, aren't you one of them?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, now, dude, if your position is that you didn't see a plane crash in the Pentagon, there's no plane debris, how could you bring out plane debris? You understand, Adam? All right, I'm not insulting you, dude. I'm just saying, just that I think, I don't know why you're doing this, right? I don't know whether you're intentionally misinforming people or that you really believe this, like what you believe. I can't tell. So I'm not going to speculate, right? I'm not going to call you a fraud or disingenuous. I was rude to you before because I'm sick and tired of no planes. I really am. But dude, just come to grips, okay? You can't possibly refute anything I'm saying in this video. I know you said you can't wait to see this video. All right, yeah, here it is, man. I'm talking to you like a serious individual.
Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Well, I can't say that I was one of them actually.
I can't say I was one of them. He caught himself. You caught yourself. That's funny.
But yes, I that's pretty much what I.
Even you're laughing a little bit. So is Richard Gage. It's fun. That's fun.
Was doing, but again, everything goes back to you know, if this is the debris inside, including potential plane parts, how could, you know, such an enormous plane be reduced to this rate?
Okay, one, let me point out something that's quite obvious. This is a photograph from a very far angle up in the air. This is from the helicopter, I'm assuming. This is a very far distance. That's a lot of debris, actually, if that's from the plane. And I think that is because they were talking about the debris being located in the north parking lot. This is the north. This is the parking lot. This is the heliport. Here's the fire. This is where Sean Boger works. Here's the heliport. So right here is where the plane debris is. Right over, I think here's it, A&E, C&D Drive, A&E Drive. A&E Drive is right here. And I think here is where the debris inside the buildings that Lee Eby was talking about in the video I played is being placed here. Okay, so it's separate from the plane debris. But right here, that's a lot of plane debris. I didn't notice it.
Here. And so that was our debris pile. We were bringing things out. We put them right there. And that pile.
And again, I mean, I want to sound like a broken record. You're not going to have a nose. You're not going to have an engine, a whole engine, because of the fact that I told you that the plane intentionally crashed into the building at a highway speed with 27,000 pounds of jet fuel, basically a bomb. And I read you the after action report, which I am going to provide for you. It basically said that the plane like disintegrated in a million pieces.
Was then taken to a different location, which Alpha Company also helped secure.
Actually, it was the FBI took over because the NTSB would be the agency in charge if it was a plane malfunction. This was an act of air piracy, so that means the FBI took it over. It's an FBI investigation, and that's who was in charge of the Pentagon investigation.
And then who knows where the parts went after that? That's another question I would love.
It went to Virginia, and it was inspected by the FBI.
To find.
Okay, could you?
And Chris Combs is in charge, so that would be the person you would contact. So I can name names. I'm putting names on the evidence. You haven't named one name. Now I noticed that you were talking about this other guy, Lee Warburger or something like that. He was in charge of the Pentagon cleanup crew or something like that. You know how many cleanup crews there were? A lot.
Point out while we're here the different rings.
In fact, bring up another name. Yeah, Captain Dan Fitch, right? That's who you could also contact. Let's see if I can. Right, so he's in charge of TRT cleanup. Dan Fitch. So that's who you would contact. So good luck with that. I mean, good luck if you do it or if you don't. Who else could you contact? Well, James Schwartz, he's the instant commander for the overall operation. Like I said, Battalion Chief Dale Jerome Smith, who directed operations in the center courtyard. Captain Mike Smith from Arlington, he's in charge of Engine 108, like I said before, and he had his crew of people working in the burning building of the Pentagon. Specialist Dakota Gallivan. I named these names already. I'm not going to. You know what? I don't know why I'm repeating myself because I'm like really tired. But I named these names. You go ahead, contact me. Contact me. See how far you get.
Yeah, E-rings right here. D, C, and the exit hole should be on this wall right on here. So they said the plane traveled through here, through here, through here, and we're going to get to the exit hole in a second, and then left an exit hole.
No. The plane impacted here. The energy then traveled. The explosion from the jet fuel, the energy, exploded through the first floor. So it didn't go through four separate rings, right? This is one floor from here to there, from there to here, one floor, not separate rings or anything like that. So the transfer of energy, as well as the plane debris, managed to explode all the way through to A&E. That's what happened.
In this ring right here.
Okay.
Another topographical photo.
Yeah, show that same explanation again in this photo.
So the plane came from this angle, entered in, cut right through here, through this ring.
No, no. See, that tells me that you don't know the layout of the building. It didn't cut through anything. These are not separate walls. This is first floor, second, third. You could see it. You could look at the difference between here and there. This is higher than here. Okay, so the plane impact is here. It traveled to the first floor, which is connected. The first floor is connecting. You can't see it because they're one floor apart from each other, one floor elevated, second floor. That means it went to first floor, first floor, first floor of this building, first floor of this building. Okay? That's what happened.
This is the D ring through the C ring, and then put an exit hole. And that, I believe is it right in there?
No, it's over here. This is not the first floor. It's damage.
You can kind of tell with the
Yeah, the black part looks like it is above the exit
Adam,
hole.
come on.
So, but yeah, it's one of those things. You know, more damage. You know, if the initial plane hitting the building could, you know, break out such a fire, how could it not do the same in other parts?
It did. I just read you to leave your report. And basically, like I said, see how this is fire, the fire traveled through here? What they did, and I read you the report and as well as articles where they made shear holes. So the fire couldn't spread to these upper roofs. This roof is higher than this roof.
You know, why were there no, you know, other further damage? You can see in pictures, you know, fires breaking out inside the building, you know, way down in here. Why wasn't the same going on around here? You know, why would?
Because this is the wing. This is the west wing, the Pentagon. This is where the renovation project was happening. First floor, second floor, third floor, fourth, one higher, each one higher than the other. That's why it didn't travel. And on top of that, the firemen from Arlington County Fire and Fort Myer and Ronald Reagan Airport basically created shear holes so that fire couldn't spread. And by September 12th, they had it managed under control.
It just didn't make any sense. Why did we not spend more time deployed in other areas? You know, when we were
what in this view, what is the extent of your deployment? Of your company?
So right here, this is just me individually. Again, I have to speak for me alone because I can't speak for everybody else. But
well, that's what he asked me. He asked for anybody.
At the furthest, you know, both of the rings to that degree, you know, if the plane were to come and actually go all the way through 3 rings, you know.
It didn't go through 3 rings. It went to 1 floor. The fact that you don't know that much, really, that alone questions whether I believe that you were even there. Whether the credentials you have are even valid. But like I said, I can't disprove that because I don't know. You could be ignorant about the layout of the building. That could very well be a plausibility. That you didn't even know that much. But how could you not know that much when you claim to be working in the first two rings? You would know that the first floor connects to the whole building, straight through A&E Drive.
And if my company, 2 companies are on site, you know, there to help federal authorities remove damage, remove bodies, remove debris, why didn't we ever get closer to the exit hole?
Well, you would have seen it, I imagine.
Precisely.
There were a number of agencies that were working near the impact point. I just named a whole bunch. I just named the 2 firemen at Fairfax who found the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder, Carl Berghammer and Brian Morovitz. They found them right near the impact. What do you mean nobody was working near the impact?
So
Yeah.
for those who don't know,
really,
point out the.
I'm not like this. I'm different. So is Nelson and a couple of others, right? It's only a handful of us. We're not Richard Gage. We're not Barbara Hannigan. We're not these fringe conspiracy theorists where we can't discern what is right, what is factual, what is not, because we don't have a preconceived bias. The only thing that we're driven by is evidence. That's it. Like an investigator. Investigator goes to a crime scene. He doesn't say, "Oh, I know what didn't happen here." He goes by the evidence of the crime scene. And does he interview people who weren't there or the people that were there? Well, the people that were there. I'm not going to listen to anybody who wasn't there, right? You claim to be there. You're the only person I've ever heard that was at the scene of 9/11 and make these statements. You're the only one. Out of the thousands of people, you're the only one. And it's easily refuted by the hundreds and hundreds of people who actually contradict your statements made in this interview today. So what am I to take away from this, Adam? Right? Am I to take away that they're all lying? That they're all part of it? They're in on it? Maybe they're mistaken, all of them. Maybe the shadow government coerced them and forced them. How do you go about proving that? Those are your only defenses. You have nothing else.
The roof of the plane path, above the plane path. The plane went underneath the second floor, and underneath the first floor. And so you don't see the path of the plane above that courtyard plaza, if you will, because the plane went underneath it if the plane was there. What we see above the courtyard plaza is 3 stories in the E ring and the D ring. And then if you look, point out the windows on the C ring, you see all 5 stories. So that explains the architectural layout here.
Yeah. And I always point to, this is kind of another picture, but I always point to the actual exit hole, and kind of, there's some great pictures I'm going to show here in a second that kind of show the inside, and we can kind of get to those in a second. I don't want to skip ahead, but just more kind of pictures of what it looked like on the inside. A lot of, like, for example, fire damage, clearly, stuff hanging from the ceiling, clearly, but then, other things, filing cabinets, desks that didn't really get touched as much.
Well, again, this is pretty, you're not being really honest here, right? So where was this picture taken? How far was it from the damage point? We don't know. So for you to assume that this picture shows something different than what is already shown, right, really is not honest of you to do that. Where was this picture taken? Was it 100 feet away from the impact point? 200, 300? First floor, second floor, where? Right? So you're not describing in detail these pictures, because what you're doing, I think, is just showing these pictures that you found online and trying to explain, how, it could fit your narrative.
It was just a very, very different kind of scene, to say the least. We never went up, I like to show this picture. You can see from the background that this picture is higher up. We never went up into, the higher up floors. But I just kind of show this to highlight again some of the pictures, and, just kind of the scene as well.
Why? What you're not giving context, right? Why are you showing these pictures? It actually shows the damage made from the plane, right? It shows burning and whatnot, but you're not giving any context whatsoever. So in other words, I'm talking about your position, right? If you don't think a plane hit the Pentagon, what caused all this damage? So you never explain. So far, you haven't explained that much. So these pictures are really just, I don't know, it's just almost like a waste of time if you're not going to bring it into context.
Things burning through here. And I don't think that a lot of these offices were occupied. Obviously, I think had just finished renovating the building. and they were still doing some things. I'm not exactly sure. I'm still digging into some of that.
No, well, there's, I mean, you got the Naval Operations Center. That's where most of the deaths happened. The management intervene. I forgot the MI something. It was on the third or fourth floor. Counting offices. I mean, there was people working on the West Wing. It was. I don't know how many.
But you know, not a lot of people there. But just
how could you say that? How can you say that? You don't know that.
Obviously damaged in some ways, but you know, I just
read reports too on articles and the after action report of people who actually suffered burns on the first and second floors. Right, so
pictures like this, and I asked myself, you know, why wasn't there more damage?
You're assuming that these pictures are right by the impact point. You give no context as where these pictures are because you're actually looking at online pictures of the Pentagon and you don't know where they're at. And the people who took these pictures, I named them in the beginning of the video.
You know, if a plane truly hit that area going as fast as it did, you know, what on earth is this? You know, a lot of the people that claim, you know, that are out there that say that, you know, the plane damage.
Well, when I showed you that video of Levy, here's a core column. His burning charred wreckage of the plane.
Was there, and they point to pictures like this.
Yeah, and you know what? They used this picture in the Zacharias Moussaoui trial 2006. So, in other words, here's another point, right? You should have went right to Zacharias Moussaoui's lawyer and basically told him, hey, listen, no plane crash at the Pentagon. Really? Well, my client is guilty of being in part of the operation. Well, if there was no planes and no hijackers, there is no operation. So my client could get off. Why aren't you talking to him? Why are you outside Guantanamo Bay asking for the release of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, Mustafa Hasnawi, Ramzi bin Al-Shib, Abdulaziz Ali, and Wali bin Attash, the 5 men who were responsible for 9/11? No planes, no hijackers. What do you mean? What operation? I don't see you standing up to them. I don't see you calling lawyers. You're not making videos of that. Hey, by the way, I got evidence to show that Al-Qaeda wasn't involved. There's no plane crashes, no what? Really? Hey, let's hear your case. You're not doing that, are you? And yeah, all these years, you basically were in the silence, in the shadows. And now you just pop out of nowhere, right? What you could have done all those years was basically contact what I just told you to contact. But you didn't do that, did you? You went to Richard Gage. You went on these right-wing shows that cater to your worldview. That's what you did.
Okay, you know, I don't know how the things that I became very familiar with, even under, you know, fire and stressful conditions like that, slamming into a building like that, still couldn't produce some additional evidence in places like this. You know, this right here, again, the plane would have came exactly like this.
From right to left?
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, this is the wood shoring that we were talking about before that was holding up that piece of the E-ring. So.
Okay, you didn't make any sense whatsoever here. So you're basically saying there's not. First of all, you said there's no extensive damage. Yeah, right. Okay, so let me catch myself because I can see myself getting agitated. Right? You once said in this video, in fact, you said it like 3 times, that the damage should have been more. Look at this damage. This is not even the impact point. This is by the wings. Impact point is collapsed. The damage was extensive. 1,800, I think it was like, sorry, I forgot, it was like 7,000 square feet or something like that. contradictory to everyone that was there that saw this and reported that the damage was so extensive. It cost them another, like, it was millions of dollars to renovate the Pentagon again.
You know, this is the wood shoring that we were talking about before that was holding up that piece of the E-ring. So more just kind of detail. You can see where the fires kind of just burned through everything. And again, I'll never forget when we came on site and when we really started to go into that building. Somebody in the group that I was with when we were getting our first kind of briefing looked over at the wood shoring and was like, "Is that safe?" And there was an engineer there, and you know, he looked at us and basically said, "Well, have you guys filled out your wills?" He was joking around with us, and he said, "Yeah, it's safe. You guys aren't going to get crushed." But you know, he jokingly tried to make light of a situation, and I was.
Why would you? Anyway, yeah, all these shores up here, basically, this is the impact point right here, right here. And the main impact points all the way over.
It's like, you know, don't joke about these types of things. I don't want to get, you know, crushed by a building.
Well, go back. That shoring is there because those columns are gone.
Yeah.
And the question is, the collapse is to the right here.
Yep, and the plane would come just like that.
Well, maybe maybe the wing took out the columns on the left side of that collapse.
Wow.
We'll learn more on Saturday, March 19th, when we have 3 people have spent the last 10 years investigating this mishap.
Was he talking about David Chandler, Wayne Costi, and Barbara Honegger? Should be fun. Yeah, Adam Eisenberg, I don't know what your beef is with Chandler and Costi. I know that you're quite critical of them, but the difference between myself and them is that, you know, they're much more technical, literate than I ever could be or imagine. But I must, you know, I'll dare to say that I'm a little bit more learned regarding the geopolitical aspects of 9/11. They deal with physics, and I don't know nothing about physics. And I've interviewed both men, and I consider them brilliant minds. And I've interviewed them for my podcast. I've listened to them for years. And the depth of their knowledge regarding the World Trade Center, what happened is just, you know, it's like Sanskrit to me. I mean, it's amazing to hear them talk and write when they write. Wayne Costi wrote a paper regarding the World Trade Center. And I'm like, my God, it's like reading meteorology. You know, I'm trying to learn meteorology, and I'm like throwing my hands up in the air because it's so stressful. So I don't know what your beef is with them. I don't know. I'm not going to step in that water either because, you know, I don't know, you know, pro or con what happened there.
If it wasn't a plane, that would mean it would be explosions, I imagine, or a missile.
Something.
Or a missile. A missile's going to knock down 5 light poles and all these columns. Why would you shoot a missile into the Pentagon, knowing full well that the people who work in the Pentagon can discern between a plane and a missile?
Some claim, and that would put the column.
Places in the world to shoot a missile, you're going to shoot at the Pentagon. I mean, maybe Shanksville, right? Maybe the World Trade Center, but at the Pentagon.
That would blow the column out of the building. And so I'm wondering if the column.
Well, it wouldn't knock down so many columns. It wouldn't clip a tree. And nobody saw a missile. Missile doesn't do a tight a loop before it impacts the Pentagon.
Column was found out of the building.
Yeah, I'm by no means a ballistics expert. I will tell you, though, I don't think it was a missile. You know, and we don't even have to get into, you know, what I think it is at this point. But, you know.
No, that's going to be the case, right? You have to explain yourself as to what happened here. You're basically saying, I know what didn't happen here, right? That's your belief is this. I don't believe a plane hit the Pentagon, right? Now, I really don't care what you believe. I want to know what you know. And that's the difference, Adam, right? That's the reason why I'm different than Gage, Honegger, and Mick Harrison, and all these other people, right? I'm going to hold you to your words, brother, right? What do you know? I don't care what you believe. I don't care about what you believe. I don't care what you speculate. If you have evidence to show other than Flight 77 crashing here, what is it? Because so far, I have eyewitness testimony, I have physical evidence, and technical data to show that Flight 77 crashed here. You don't. To the contrary. You don't.
That's one thing that I can definitively say, that I don't think, also that a missile hit the building. So
Okay.
For what it's worth.
And it looks like we can see one of the columns to the right of the shoring, which is on the left. Can you point to it? It's right where your mouse is now. Yeah,
Right.
the concrete to the right of that. Go slow,
Here.
slow. To the left, right there, and then all the way up. That is, looks to me like a very badly damaged column. So anyway, we'll learn more later about the columns.
Sure.
And so forth.
But moving right along, pictures like this kind of illustrate to me, once we started to get the damage out, just how small that area was. You could see that they had
Small. It was 156. What was it again? 136 feet wide. No, 150. What was Chris Sarn's picture? 137 feet wide. Holy small. The entire first floor of the west wing of the Pentagon was destroyed. Oh. Second floor, half of the second floor destroyed. And damage to third and fourth.
had removed all that rubble at this point. They were probably holding some type of a ceremony. I'm not sure exactly what was going on here. They're holding the flags, but just a picture to kind of highlight just how small the damage was.
God's sakes, Adam, come on, brother. I mean, you just show pictures of extensive damage. It contradicts even the pictures that you provided, which you found on the internet. And, I wish I could link the Pentagon renovation program in its full, but I can't because I don't have a link. It's video, and it's on C-SPAN. Just put Pentagon renovation program. That's all.
And this is another picture that I love.
And they show you videos of the extensive damage, the building, just enormous damage.
To show this is pretty much the angle that the plane hit the building at, just like this.
Yeah, this is the collapse point, by the way. And so they cut off parts of the area that they could salvage.
Just always have had a very difficult time believing that, a plane as big as.
See, again, words, right, Adam? I don't care what you believe. I don't care whether you believe Godzilla attacked the Pentagon, right? I don't care about that. I want to know what you know. That's it. By you saying that, only leads me to think that, wow, he's just believing these things because he hates to find out the fact that Flight 77 crashed here for whatever reason. I don't know why you're doing it.
A Boeing 757, didn't do more damage than this. And
because you never saw an intentional plane crash in your life. And you wouldn't know what an intentional plane crash would look like, especially at the Pentagon. Like you said before, how can we replicate a plane crash in the Pentagon? You can't.
obviously we had been on site for quite some time at this point. You can tell the shoring, you can tell all these things, but just.
It's funny, I wonder if you believed this while you were at the Pentagon. I think you said at that point you would start to have questions. Now, did you share that with anybody while you were at the Pentagon? And there's other people like you? Who are they? Because it would be a small number, if at all.
Just to get oriented
But again,
here,
I don't know.
this looks like the area that collapsed, and the collapse has now been removed. The collapse.
That's obvious, Gage.
Debris has been removed, so this is a section cut out of the building, if you will.
Yep, exactly. Another picture. This is a big one. So a lot of people claim that this right here is an engine part.
It is.
Again, I am not experienced with Rolls-Royce engine parts, but
Wait a minute. Didn't you just say you work for Pratt & Whitney and that you know about plane parts? You just said that at the beginning of the video. We could play that. You can identify plane parts. Let's hear that again.
people claim that this right here is an engine part. Again, I am not experienced with Rolls-Royce engine parts.
Okay, so you're not experienced with Rolls-Royce engine parts, even though you said, and which is the reason why you mentioned in the beginning, I worked at Pratt & Whitney, I know about plane parts. Now you're saying, oh, I don't know anything about Rolls-Royce plane parts. Should have been a lot more specific, right? Now, this picture is not big, right? This is the turbofan, where the blades are for the big engine, right? It's obviously sheared. Now, how is it sheared? How did that happen? Well, that's what would happen if the plane was going 530 miles an hour, holding 28,000 pounds of fuel. Planes basically made out of aluminum. The steel survived. The engines, the turbofans are made out of steel. That's what survived. The blades didn't survive. The shellings didn't survive. And the big aluminum core that's protecting it didn't survive, obviously.
Parts, but what I will tell you is that this does look like that pile that I was showing you guys, and that door that you can go in and out of the building. It was right here, that entranceway. So this was kind of the pile, I guess you could say, of debris that we were pulling out of there. So again, I would love to, if these parts are even still in existence, look at them, inspect them. But
I believe some of those parts are at the museum, the 9/11 museum. I think I'm right. Isn't there a museum in Washington, D.C.?
I have a difficult time believing that something that is,
Okay, again, Adam Eisenberg, I don't care that you have a hard time believing it. Makes no difference. What is true and what is not. It's the only thing that matters.
extremely much, a lot larger than a full-size vehicle, 8,000.
Obviously, but then again, you're just not realizing that these parts are not going to look like or become undamaged when the plane is crashing into a building at 536 miles an hour. Sorry if you can't understand the basic physics.
Pounds was reduced to just a little bit, and not only that, this piece looks like it wasn't even, obviously it looks like it might have been exposed to some fire. It looks blackened, it looks messed up, but I just feel like, these parts would have been mangled a heck of a lot more.
Obviously they were. I mean, goodness sakes, dude, this is, first of all, steel. Flying right through the building. Imagine the plane just crashing right through the first floor, and all the explosion, all the force and energy that traveled through at the speed, near the speed of sound. As I mentioned before, from the after action report. What is surviving from that? Why don't you understand? It's because you don't realize, intentional plane crashes and the effects of thereof. It's the only thing I could think of.
Didn't see anything like this.
Well, we're still missing the entire
fuselage.
Well, the engine.
No, that is part of the engine gauge.
The engine too, yeah.
There's two of them. They're 8,000 pounds each, and you didn't see any plane parts in there, much less an engine, right?
No.
I mean, the engine would have created a path, quite a path, I would imagine.
Well, not only that, the expert, the man on site, Lee Wheelbarger, he has more time on site than anybody. He's mentioned in the 9/11.
No, that's not true. Actually, nobody had more time on site than James Schwartz. Just a fact.
11 commission report. very, very prideful and very much opinionated on him being the subject matter expert, has an opinion on where the engines hit. And I can tell you, I'm not going to go down that route, but I will tell you that I disagree with his assertion, and I believe I have the evidence to prove it.
Well, if the engine, if anything was going to create the exit hole, you would imagine that it would be one or both engines, which are going 500 miles an hour. They're not going to be stopping at a gypsum board wall. So where did they go?
They were disintegrated on the point of impact at the explosion. What don't you understand? Do I need to read the report again? No, I'm not going to repeat.
They would be the first thing you would imagine that people would be finding and photographing for the world to see.
Well, I know where he says they hit. He also said point blank that he pulled them out of the wreckage. I would love to ask him that on record one day.
8,000 pounds. Well, he is quite a character.
They're not going to be 8,000 pounds at the point of impact. You know, we don't live in this world where, like, oh, the engine should have went right to the wall and right through the explosion unscathed. What are you living in? I haven't showed you, like, again, I hate to repeat myself, 2 other plane crashes where they didn't even find the engine. Not even a turbofan.
We'll learn more about him some other time, I guess.
Absolutely. But just more damages. I don't try to go too into the much. Oh, here we go. This is what I was trying to get into, going into this. So this is the infamous exit hole that was in the inside of the ring where the, you can look straight down that hole. And again, I just say, if a commercial jet, a commercial airplane, entered that building and went down below into that area where all these things were happening, why wasn't there more damage?
Why wasn't there more damage? You just showed extensive damage in previous photos. Here's part of the landing gear. Look, right here. Right in front of you. Right in front of this wall. This is where the explosion stopped. And then crew workers basically created the wall. Look, broke out part of the wall so they could travel and collect the plane debris and start the cleaning process. That's what they did.
So this is where it came out.
Yeah.
No, the plane doesn't come out here, right? This is the explosion from the plane. And the debris traveled all the way through the first floor and exited here. Obviously.
Yeah, and some people, could argue that they could say that these are parts. I could see people making that argument. But who has the experience with the airline parts? I would love to speak.
Aren't you supposed to be that's the reason why, again, you're the guy who basically said, I have experience with plane parts. I worked at Pratt & Whitney. Okay. You can't tell there's a plane part? I know this picture. I've seen it thousands and thousands of times. You can't tell.
Speak with them. By all means, let's learn together. Let's figure it out.
Let's learn together. Adam, it's almost the end of the video, and you know damn well that you didn't do anything here in this video. Not once.
But, this hole has raised a lot of suspicion. Why is there no, no fuselage nose? Where's the front? Where's
the nose? Really? And this is where, before I did the videos, I was stunned. I was talking to Nelson about this. I said, I can't believe he asked that question. I can't believe you asked that question, that the nose would exit out here. Now, they found parts of the cabin. I told you the guy that saw it, Lieutenant Colonel Kevin Schaefer. He saw part of the cabin. He saw it. But to expect the nose to come out, this picture is basically part of the cleanup at night. In this field is plane debris. There's other pictures showing it, including the landing gear tire.
impact. How did, this hole get so perfectly severed out?
Well, I'll tell you what happened is that, and it's explained by Lee Evey in the Pentagon renovation program. Look it up on C-SPAN. I played the video, but I didn't play that part. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I did. Where he explained that the workers created the hole bigger so that they can exit in and out with the Bobcat and get all the debris. That's what they did.
And then nothing else, really spills into outside of this.
You would know that if you had worked here, as you claim. You would know that. The fact that you don't know that really questions whether you were here or not. But like I said,
this light damage and whatever this stuff is. I mean, some people have even made a remark that like this right here could have been a wheel well. Well, how do you know that?
Because you could look at it and specifically say, oh, this is part of the plane. The plane that everyone saw. The plane that you claimed didn't crash there. People like Steve Riskus. I saw the plane hit the building. It did not hit the ground first. It did not hit the roof first. It hit dead center on the edge. Sean Boger. I just looked up and I saw the big nose and the wings of the aircraft coming right at us. And I watched it hit the building. Hell, why am I reading this? Let me do you even a bigger favor, right? So this is basically near the end of the video. Should I just play this? You know what? Let me play this video. Here are eyewitnesses, neighbors, people on the outside, people who worked at the Pentagon, who didn't work at the Pentagon. This is what they saw. Let's play it.
I saw it was an American Airlines 757, and it came in and hit the heliport, came down Columbia Pike and hit the heliport next to the Pentagon. I live in an apartment building on that side of the Pentagon, and it just crashed right into.
We were on Columbia Pike where the shelter is, and all of a sudden you can hear the noise coming first, and then you can feel the shaking of the building. And we just looked up out of the window, and I saw the tail end go.
What size plane?
It was for me, it looked like a big size plane. It was definitely a passenger.
In traffic on Route 110 on my way to work. I work across the street. And it was an American Airlines plane that came in and hit the Pentagon. I believe it was a 737. I could be mistaken. It might have been a 707, but it was definitely a commercial plane.
Coming in to the Pentagon this morning, identify yourself and tell us what you saw.
My name is Ed Hudson. I was coming to work at the Navy Annex. I was passing by Fort Myer, and I saw a large airliner-sized plane, roughly a 767-sized airliner. Very deep descent, approaching the Pentagon. As I didn't actually see the impact, but I did see hear the blast, and saw the smoke rising from the crash.
Officer Faust gave out the broadcast that he saw a plane that just crashed. At that time, we immediately left the station and responded down here to the Pentagon. We arrived within minutes after the crash over here at the south parking lot.
That distinctive silver finish, in our minds, it was definitely an American Airlines aircraft. And as he moved to our 11 o'clock position, he started his turn, and by the time he got to our 12 o'clock position, right out the front of the aircraft, he was rolled up into about, I would estimate, 30 to 40 degrees of bank, which is considerable for a commercial airline. And then all of a sudden, we saw this big explosion. And I keyed the mic again and said, Washington, this is Gopher 06. That airplane has hit the west side of the Pentagon.
I came over my house and right down Columbia Pike. Just like a plane that was about to land and flying over, but this plane was in full speed.
I saw it. There's just no question at all that the plane went into the Pentagon wall.
What I saw was a jumbo jet hit the Pentagon. The end.
Like these guys are going around saying that no plane hit the Pentagon and it flew over.
I know. I'm aware of that. And that's what I'm saying. They don't care about the truth.
I saw it over the gas station. I saw it over the grass. I saw it right in front of me. I saw it hit the building.
I saw an airplane hit. I saw a big yellow fireball, and bottom line is I saw the plane hit. It hit the building.
The plane flew right over my head and hit the Pentagon.
When I saw it, it was coming in over Henderson Hall at the Sheraton Hotel, to the left of the Sheraton.
Like, there's people that are saying, like...
Not only did I see the plane hit the Pentagon, I spent the next 2 weeks pulling out bodies out of the Pentagon.
That plane followed Route 395 right into the Pentagon, just like it was following a AAA map. Oh, I saw it. So you can chalk me up as one that saw it. So.
Yeah, so you saw it actually hit the Pentagon with your own eyes then?
I did. Hear it or anything or see it until it had already passed over the top of my car.
But you actually seen it with your own eyes hit the Pentagon?
Yes, I did.
I know, but they're not right.
Okay, so with your own eyes, you can confirm it hit the Pentagon?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's a wrap, Adam. And I have a playlist on my YouTube channel dedicated to the eyewitnesses and survivors of the Pentagon. There's 50 videos on there. Separate from that. Not to mention, the 88 listing eyewitnesses, which I'll provide in the description box. All of these people contradict what you claim didn't happen. So, Adam, in other words, if we were in a court of law and it was me versus you, once again, who do you think the judge is going to believe? You provided zero evidence for anything that you said here today. It's the reason why I did this video. Now, whether you do a response video contradicting my evidence, which you're not going to do, or two, you're basically going to say, you know what, I was wrong. Either one. Or three, you just ignore everything. Don't respond at all. Keep doing videos with these small YouTube channels promoting the fringe conspiracy theories that contradict the evidence presented in this video. And I presented, a minimal amount. I didn't even prepare for this video. That's the amazing part of this. And I showed you an overwhelming amount of contradictory evidence to your statements. I don't know what you could possibly say from this point on.
And still, where's the rest of the plane? It's all very very suspicious. But to say it clearly, as I've said before, I did not, in all of my 240 hours on site, I did not see any plane parts, and I consider myself a credible source because I had working experience with plane parts.
Yeah, and yet in this video, near the end, you basically said I couldn't identify certain plane parts.
Nor did I.
How do we know what's the difference between a wheelbarrow? I wish we could get some experts on that. Those are your words. Another one today, where Gage asked you, hey, were you involved in the plane collection duty? You said yes, and then you caught yourself. What am I to believe here?
See anybody that looked like they were on a plane.
They're not going to. I don't know how you can say that we should be able to see a human body survive an enormous explosion, surviving 35,000 pounds of fuel, exploding on impact into a wall at 536 miles an hour.
It had died from a plane impact. I never smelled gasoline.
Yet, I just read about 12 people who smelled gasoline. And some of them weren't even in the Pentagon. They were outside of it.
And I'm willing to testify in front of the world to that. And so,
Who cares about what you think in front of a video? Why don't you go to court? That's the end of the video. Adam, I think it's overwhelming in this video that you can't possibly believe what you believe unless you're either intentionally trying to disform people or you really believe your beliefs. Like you genuinely believe them, because for you hate the government so much that you're willing to believe anything, even that which is irrational, just because it's in or against the official narrative, right? For what is the official narrative? Do you even know? So I'm going to end it here, Adam. I really don't know what you could possibly do to basically say, other than say that all the people I just named are lying, or all the people I just named are coerced by the shadow government, or everybody I just named is misinformed. Good luck proving that much.